Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. It is January 22nd, special board meeting. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm asking Dr. Geisels to lead. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start this meeting, and what we're going to do is brief introductions, and if it's okay with the board, Trustee Vice President Lori Walker is absent tonight, and so I've asked Trustee Carrion to serve as VP for this meeting, so if trustees are okay with that? Okay, great. So then we'll start with official introductions with Namarta. Go ahead.
Good evening, Namarta Grewal, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources.
Good evening, Ahmed Islami of Business Services.
Good evening, Ed Dialazzo, Deputy Superintendent, Ed Services.
Justin Brown, Trustee, Area 5.
Charlie Jones, Trustee, Area 4.
Mary Jo Carrion, Trustee, Area 1.
And Trustee Kelly McCaughey serving as president this year. And I also wanted to mention that our student rep, Trustee Gershis, is absent as well. Keep going.
Maurice Geisel, Superintendent, good evening and thank you for attending.
Lenita Villasenor, Executive Assistant to Dr. Geisels and the Board of Trustees.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead. Tonight is a special board meeting, and so there is no public comment that include items that are not on the agenda. Going along with the next item on the agenda, for report out of closed session actions, there was no action made, no report out, so nothing to report. Open session action on closed session items, there was no action, so nothing to report. So right now, going next on the agenda, number 4, approval of the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, motion was made by VP Trustee Carrion and seconded by Trustee Jones. All those in favor, roll call, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. And motion passes 4-0, 1 absent. Typically, the next section, we have a board Q&A and meeting follow-up. I don't believe we had any questions, so there is nothing to report on that agenda. And then next section is report, discussion, and discussion action. And the way I'd like to structure this is the way we've done this in regular board meetings, where we will have the presentation. And there are several items, so we have like discussion item A, and B, so we're going to break it out and have the presentation. Then we will go with questions by trustees. Then we'll open the item for public comment for that particular item. And then we will conclude with comments from the trustees. So with that said, we're going to go with the first item on A, which is student enrollment forecast for 2025-2026. And it's a 7-year projection, so it goes all the way to 2032, 2033. So pass it off to you, Ahmad.
Great, thank you. I'll go ahead and introduce the item and introduce Mr. David Cates with MGT Impact Solutions. And so, as was indicated, the district annually updates its enrollment projections, and these projections are for 7 years. In this report, Mr. Cates will specifically discuss the methodology behind developing them, and then the specifics of the updates and how it impacts the district, both in the short, medium, and long term. And then we'd be happy to answer any questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Cates with MGT.
Thank you, Ahmad. First, I want to make sure that you can hear me okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get going on the PowerPoint here. Let's see here. And share. All right, can you see the PowerPoint slide, the first slide?
Yes.
Make sure. Thank you. Just reorganizing here. All righty. Thank you again. I appreciate you accommodating me this year again virtually. It makes it a little easier for me, and hopefully this still works out for you. Um, I have I think about a 20-minute presentation to share with you, and be, as usual, happy to answer any questions you might have. If you need to clarifying things during, you can, but if you want to wait to the end, that's fine with me as well. So I'll go ahead and get started here. All right, just to again give you kind of an overview. We've been doing this for over 10 years with your district, maybe closer to 15. Um, every year, right around October time, we request your student data each year, roughly around early October. We also research your residential development activity. We meet with the city and look at aerial imagery and do some site visits if we need to. We update our forecasts with various factors I will share with you and show you kind of how we organize the data at the district level. And then we look at it down by your different attendance zones as well and see what's going on in there. This is our methodology that we use. It's kind of a three-pillared approach. You kind of see there where it says birth factors. Those are what we estimate for incoming kindergartners, and now with transitional kindergarten as well, full grade. We should probably update our slide. It's for both of those that we do our estimates based on historical birth data. We'll cover that. In the middle, what we call our mobility factors. This is the majority of your district is established neighborhoods. So we look at your established neighborhoods and look at the trends that are going on. I'll show you, this deals with like housing resales, high school retention, apartment migration. And that's where we look at the last 4 years of data and look at recent trends and roll those through our forecast. And the last part at the end is the development research. Over those 7 years that we run this forecast out, we phase out your development, current and ones that haven't even started yet that we think or the city thinks it will happen. And then we apply what we call student yield factors that generates a certain rate for each housing type to estimate the number of students coming out of each type of housing. So let's kind of go over the basics here in the beginning. Very first thing we do, we collect your student data. We send back what we call a student verification form that the district looks at, says, yes, this looks like what we sent you or what's correct. If it's not, we send it back. They send us a new file until we get literally its signed off signature that the data is correct. Because if you don't start with good data, it's not going to work for the forecast. We go through a process we call geocoding. It's where you map. I'll back up a bit just to remind you the process. Everybody uses this process every day. It's when you punch in an address on your phone and it connects you to the best route to get there. You're mapping an address. We do this for all your kids, so we know where they all live. And behind each dot is information about the students. And so each dot is a student. On the other side there, we're talking about the analysis. We have layers where we look at your current boundaries and we look at your school sites where they're at. But we also break your district down into small neighborhood areas. There's 221 of them. Those are the building blocks of your existing zones. We use those areas for when we helped you change your boundaries a few years ago. And each of these areas, we know how many TK through 12 kids live there. And at that level, at that small study area level, those red areas you see there with their unique numbers on them, we know in the next 7 years, based on trends, how many students of those grades should be in each area for the next 7 years. So, and everything that we do, and kind of danced around this in the beginning there, is what we call a GIS or Geographical Information System. We've always done this in our 35 years. This is our cutting edge technology. Once we map those students, we could create things like this, which is a heat density map, where the yellow areas are your densest parts of your district. And even though you see you got a vast area of your district, there's a lot of areas that are uninhabitable, maybe they're mountainous or whatnot, open space, you get to see, really where your concentration of your students are. Mostly kind of in the north, and there's a cluster there on the bottom. That could also be a lot of apartment complexes. That's why it might look a little, white, red, yellow spot in there. It's very dense because that's a cluster of apartments or high. I know that's the case in the north. And then as it diminishes, it turns red and then blue to the scattering of where all the other students are. Another thing that's in our report that we do every year is we do a series of attendance matrices, one for each of your 3 levels. Essentially, it shows you your open enrollment patterns. If you kind of read across the rows at the top, you'll see ALISAL at 432. That's how many TK5 students were residing in ALISAL's boundary as of October, I guess it's 8th. When you read down the column at the bottom, the 498 is how many were attending. So then you can see the number of students. There's 64 attending ALISAL from Moore's boundary, or there's 25 that went to Moore that are living in ALISAL's boundary. So these gray ones are the students that are attending and living in that zone. And then you can see the pockets of kids for different reasons. Maybe it's a special program, maybe parents want to transport their kids to certain other schools. You get to see the transfer patterns. You get to see the out of district kids, where they're going to, the ones that live outside your boundary. And then we also separate out and show you where the special ed kids in the programs are. We have a corresponding table that takes that information from that previous table and kind of shows you it by residence and enrollment, maybe a little easier to see. Those numbers I just told you about, the students residing in ALISAL's boundary, the students enrolled, comparison to the school capacity. You can see whether you look at residence or enrollment, all your schools are below their full capacity. They're pretty well balanced. And every time I see this the last few years, I'm very happy and proud of the work that we all did together to help adjust your boundaries and zones to better balance, especially the schools in the north, like Donlin and Fairlands. They're still fairly high, but they're not deflecting all the students away from there because it's outgrown its boundary. So this is kind of an indicator to show you that worked out well. And you can see, again, the number of students that live in a certain zone and go out, certain ones that come in, and the out-of-district kids as well. So let's get into the factors quickly here. This is the birth rates that I was talking about. This one I'm just showing you for the kindergarten. But you can see this is the base year, which means we're obviously starting in 2025. Kindergartners roughly 5 years old. The birth year was 2020. So that's what the birth counts look like, and we line it up with 5 years later. So you can see that this is kind of this last October's period there. We put the previous 5 years just to show you historical trends, but really we're focusing on the next, in this case, 4 years, because we have this data, and these numbers are all below the count that were born 5 years earlier. So this kind of tells you, with the numbers being below 100%, we're anticipating smaller kindergarten class sizes coming through as a result of that. And you can see, just looking over the last 10 years in your district, the largest number is essentially now 601. You had 601 a few years back, but the numbers are more or less slowly but surely dropping down. And that's kind of been a trend. It's been going on for quite a while, probably 15, maybe even 20 years in your district. And that's very common in California as well. Birth rates are kind of dropping. Another way of looking at it too is the chart here shows you in the birth counts corresponding 5 years later to your kindergarten. And your district is a very fascinating one. You can imagine I worked with hundreds of districts all over the years. You're one of the few where the numbers of the kindergartners 5 years later are larger than what was born 5 years earlier. The main thing that's been happening is that for many years, you had a lot of families moving into your district, bringing those kids with them. So you're bringing more kids, not just what's being born, but through housing resales or maybe apartments. You had a large number. That kept you going for a while. For maybe 5, 10 years, you had very constant high enrollment because of the influx of students coming in from that. But if you notice the trend here is that this is kind of the now, you reach the point where it's almost dropping down to where it's even and maybe a little bit below. So that's also an indicator possibly of the cost of homes. You know, a home in your area, a starter home, is going to be over like 1.2 million or more, and there's a correlation there a lot of times to the housing prices or rent to who could afford to move in. So the number's been reaching more, and these are still very high. I'm just telling you, compared to other districts, but you're extraordinarily high in your capture rates for your kindergarten people moving in. It's just that it's kind of gotten kind of broken even a little bit there. The other important factor that we apply is, I told you, mobility. Mobility is we collect the last 4 years of data. So we had October 2025. We have it for 2024, 23, and 22. And we pair up the years and we look at what's happening from one year to the next. So I'll just look at this last year. We'll look in certain areas of your district. What was there in that area in a certain grade in 2024? And in that same area, how many are there 1 year later? And if a number is above 1, that means you've gained kids. And these are areas where there's no new development. So we're not double counting. We're not, these are established parts of your community, which is most of your district. And this is another indicator of kind of what's been going on in your district for many years. You see a lot more blue, if you will, than yellow. In years past, the numbers not only were blue, but they were even higher. So your mobility is very high. And that's, again, I've been saying for many years, it's a compliment to your school district. Parents moving into your district, wanting to go to your schools. That, again, it's not their development. It's just your existing homes. And you can see percentages, 5%, 7% gain from one grade to the next. It's very impressive. But like I said a moment ago, the rates, if I showed you them from a few years ago, these have been dropping a little bit. They were even higher. You had so many people coming in and moving into your district, it was keeping your attendance overall very high. And what's kind of happened is kind of caught up to you now, to the point where now you're starting to show some losses, which we'll cover in a few moments. But you can see we've broken your district down into your 9 elementary areas. So even though Alisal doesn't have 10th graders in them, just imagine the boundary of Alisal. And you can see the trends. These are very high rates, even in your high schools. Anything that I see in with a 5% loss or 2 or even 7 is very high retention rates that I've seen in many other districts. So again, I know you might look at it as glass half empty. I look at it as glass half full. Your numbers are still very good, very impressive, but they're just kind of, being adjusting now over the last few years. So that's kind of my message here. And then another point I want to make out is in district, you lost 389 students between last year and this year in your district. That could be graduating out in 12th grade, smaller kindergarten and TK coming in and other grades, but there was a net loss of 389 resident students. So I want that number to kind of stay in your head for a moment. It'll make more sense when I go through a few other items. A few other things I've added in this year's report and this presentation to show you is capture rate analysis. And this is in our report now. And you might look at these numbers and, again, glass half empty versus full, say, wow, we're not gaining 15% of these kids. It's 85%. These are very high. If I showed you, which I can't really do, but all the many other districts we work with, it's very typical. I see numbers in the 60s and 70s all the way down. So, and then on top of it, these are out of district kids of these grades that are coming into your district. So it's almost even more a higher percentage, but this is in district. Estimated counts by grade, what should, or age should be in your district, the number of attending students in your district by grade. And these are, again, very high, very impressive. So if you're looking at ways now that you're declining to gain back kids, I'm not saying you can't do that. I'm just saying that, again, very high percentages. You could always try to gain back. As you're kind of doing over here on the right, I was asked to show you some of your historical out-of-district student counts that you might not really get to see easily through the data you look at every day. Because we have those dots, I know exactly where the kids live. So if you look, just going back to 2019, you could see the ramp up by grade grouping and by total of the number of out-of-district kids coming into your district. So this also is a way of compensating for some of the loss or lessening the impact, if you will. So you're up to 563. You were almost, half of that in 2019. And we have on our forecast these kind of continuing to go up. And I'm sure you've done this on purpose, or you just have more openings and parents can enroll because there's room now in some of your schools. The last part is the development. That the factors in the new students coming in from new housing. These are the factors we updated a few years ago. They're still pretty consistent. We have 4 main housing types that we've been tracking for you: single family detached units, regular single family homes. MFAs are multifamily attached, that are like condos or townhomes, still individually owned. There's the variation of the apartments of transit-oriented development, which are high-end apartments, more upper part of your district towards the BART stations. And then there's just what we'll call them regular apartments, rental units further south in your district. They're non-TODs. And we have the numbers here. And you can see that single family and the condos are the ones that really generate the most kids. The apartments, most of them, again, are, especially the transit-oriented ones, are luxury type, high rent. You don't typically get many students coming out of there, especially young students. The older apartments or maybe more affordable apartments, you'll generate a little bit more. But they build a lot of these units a lot quicker and faster than they do single family. So it's the single family, ideally, that's where you want to have most of your units coming in. Your district is mostly built out, so it's infill. A lot of it are apartments coming in, and we did our research on that. 39% of the new units coming in are going to be of the transit-oriented type. 29% are single family. And based on our numbers, again, this over a 7-year period, we estimate about 1,569 students being generated and all these units are built. But remember, if we just take that number, divide it by 7, that's about, let's say, 220 kids. Remember, number I told you what you lost in 1 year, 389. So in a moment here, when I'm about to show you your forecast, I want you to understand that even though you have a lot of units and in your mind a lot of development, what they're yielding is still not enough to compensate for what's been losing. Lastly, this is right out of the report of all the developments. We met with your departments. With Ahmad, we met with the city planning. We went through every single project. These are the ones they felt have the most chance of happening over the next 7 years. We update this every year. So there's about 20 projects scattered among your 9 attendance areas, 3,220 total units. And you can see the percentage here. Most of them are the multifamily type, condos, townhomes, and even apartments. The majority of them are. And most of them, you can see, are concentrated here in the Alisal area. And that's whether you call it the old East Pleasanton plan, a specific plan. It's kind of been broken up and divided up. That's what's the highest concentration of new units are being planned. These are a lot smaller. In our report, you could look at each one, but I'm going to try to jump right now into our overall district-wide forecast. Just to give you an idea of what the mobility factors do, these are the transitions as you move diagonally through the grades. Kindergarten this year, first grade next year. The year after that, second grade, and so on. So you can see that we still show growth when you look at it in that perspective. The problem is when you look at these columns, these first 4 columns are your real students. These are not mathematical calculations. These are your historical counts by grade in district. And you can see a trend here that's been happening for a while now, beyond 2022, is that larger grades are now in the higher grades. They graduate out. What's coming in? Smaller kindergarten, which translates into they're still growing. They're just not growing. They're not at the 1,000 level. They're now at the 800, maybe even dropping down 700. This year you had a little bigger drop in the kindergarten. So that has a ripple effect through our forecast for your future kindergartners and your future TK. But it also has that diagonal with the mobility factors. You're still gaining, like I showed you. You're just working off a different base, a smaller base. And the housing is brought in, the students from new housing gets folded into these numbers for all the grades. So there's growth also from the new housing each year. So you can see though, again, the problem is as these larger grades graduate out and these smaller ones come in and these are more of the trend, that's what's been happening. You kind of hit your peak maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. It's been kind of dropping despite the development. And now we will skip to the next page. This is the bottom of that page. I couldn't fit it all. We're projecting over a 7-year period another 1,250 loss. Interestingly, about divided evenly among your 3 grade groupings, a little over 400 at each of the levels. But in the whole scheme of things, that's really not that bad. It's a loss of students, a loss of funding, I understand. But facility-wise, again, you've better balanced your zones. So I don't know. I think you're going to be okay for a little while on your zones, but it's just something to keep an eye on if these losses continue to happen at this level. So there's just a graph showing you the trends down for the next 7 years. This shows you by those study areas I told you the net change over the next 7 years. Red being the one with the most growth. So that's again in the Alisal area. That's those areas I showed you. Orange is other pockets of growth. And then the yellow and the green are stable as the gray. And the green and the greenish levels, those are declines. So the majority of your district is kind of aging out and declining. And you got some areas or pockets of some growth. The 362, I'm just telling you, it's kind of up in this area. Most of the 725, I should say. Most of it's all kind of in these areas here. Otherwise, you don't see any other red anywhere else. Now let's just kind of look at the different layers, which are your zones. This is your elementary zones. And unfortunately, except for that one area, you can see they're all in the next 7 years they're going to decline. Not all at once, and these aren't huge numbers. Some are large, like Walnut Grove is actually a pretty good sized number. But I left in here those numbers from our report where you can see by these zones what there are and what they're going to be down the line with each of these zones. And Alisal is going to grow quite a bit, but there's other areas around it that are declining. So that might be an area down the line where you could do a little bit of boundary shifting to accommodate that once that project really gets going in the next couple of years. At the middle school level, again, decline at all 3 levels, some more than others. This is kind of the older aging part of your community down here in the Pleasanton area. And yeah, there's the numbers are declining, some maybe not right away, but those smaller numbers that are in the elementaries will eventually continue to hit your middle schools, and the kind of the writings on the wall that these are going to decline as well. And these numbers do not include out of districts. These are just what's in your zone, in your boundary zones. So here's your last two for your high schools. More of a loss for the Foothill Green area than for Amador Valley. But you can kind of see the numbers that they're at. They're still pretty solid numbers for high school, but that's the way the numbers are distributed for those two. And again, I just kind of already covered a lot of these things just by my presentation, but you're declining, and you've got development is just not enough to offset, like I say here, the aging of the majority of your population. And it's been happening for a while. So it's just continuing to happen. And unfortunately, not just your district, but I'm just going to give you a little interesting tidbit here. The decline in the younger grades, especially kindergarten, that kind of was a sudden drop. A lot of districts in this country are seeing that happen as well. There's other reasons I can give you that might give you anecdotal things why that happened unexpectedly, but it's not just in your area, but other areas are really seeing even a more substantial decline in the younger grades, not as much yours. And sorry, I haven't been tracking the time. Hopefully that wasn't too bad.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments from staff before we come back to the trustees?
No, I think David covered it very well, and we'll touch upon it at the next meeting as well.
Okay, so I'm looking for questions. Yes, Trustee Carrion?
So could we go to slide 13, please?
Sure.
So this is more, to me, I don't see this as a declining enrollment so much as a lack of capturing. Because I was doing the math here. 47% a district capture rate and 77%. That's almost 800 kids or 600 kids. That, if we could capture those 600 kids, we would be able to not have declining enrollment. So I think we need to do something about the child care issue. I mean, I think that is huge. And so, Mr. D'Alonzo, I know that you've been working really hard on the TK and capturing this. Can you fill us in on what we could do to get those 600 kids?
I would love to capture the 600 kids. So that was a percentage that we caught on the demographer's report, 47 and 77 for K. So if we were, let's say all of the grades, this is the analysis piece. If all of the grades were similar, now you're capturing, even if we don't capture 100%, but if we can raise that 47 to 60% to 70%, right? You get what I'm thinking. That would really help us in terms of our enrollment. So we have some ideas in terms of really doing some outreach. I think it's an education piece at this point, meaning educating the parents too. One thing I was thinking about is, do the parents know that when you turn 4, you actually are eligible to come to school now, public school. The thing that kind of combats that is the compulsory age, meaning parents are required to send kids to school, is still 6. So maybe there's some legislation that can kind of think about that to lower it, but that's one factor. Not a huge factor, but just something to think about. And then, and again, just in education, do parents know that age 4 is now the full age of 4 by September 1st, you're now eligible to come to school. So we want to do some education. And then I think you just said it too. What do we do internally to help extend, let's say, the TK day? And I don't want to get into things that are negotiated, but meaning how do we help parents to understand that how do we keep the students longer on our campuses? So if a TK student ends the day at 12:30, I'll just throw that number out, can we keep them longer to 3 o'clock, to 6 o'clock even? So there's a lot of things in the works right now. We have had actually a few meetings recently to discuss some options.
I just want to add, I think we've got a couple of emails from parents who say, I want to be in the schools, but I don't have childcare. And I don't know if we could get more childcare?
Yes. So we actually have on the 28th the TKK Parent Information Night, and we do that annually. So we have some very aggressive language for that. We don't want to jump too fast before we improve our infrastructure. So we want to think about, well, what are the barriers that have been keeping us from expanding our Kids Club program, our extension of the day program? It may not just be solely Kids Club. What are some other ideas? That's what we're trying to capture now. So then it's attractive to that parent. Anecdotally, I've done those TKK parent nights for several years now. That's a common ask for our parents, for sure.
Anything you could do would be awesome.
Let me just add to that too. I think, this is the thinking. We've been doing a lot of work on it. It's the top of mind topic. Thank you, Janet. And other people have been working on it. It's just, we're talking about it a good majority of every day. What can we do? The other thing too, what's important is, in the absence of a full day, because a lot of parents work, both parents work, right? In the absence of that opportunity and access here, what is also a hypothesis is that when they go to private school, young parents get into relationships and friendships, and we lose them. So it's not like we're worried that they not only go to a private school, but they stay. And they don't know what they don't know in terms of PUSD's experience and how good we are. So this is top of mind. There's urgency about it. This 47% really got our attention. So more to follow.
Okay. Other questions? Yes, Trustee Jones.
So I was looking through the data, and I was wondering, where are most of our inter-district transfers coming from? I was curious about that.
Ms. Gates, do you have the breakdown of where? The way I'm thinking about where, Trustee Jones, is grade level. Are you asking what regionally?
Yeah, what
Okay.
cities, what districts, where are they coming from into PUSD?
Yeah. I'm wondering, Mr. Cates, do you know where they're coming from? I would assume it's within the valley, but do you know?
Yeah, unfortunately, on this sort of notice, I can't tell you, but I can follow up and give you a list, a breakdown. You're talking about these numbers here we see on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, I could try to do it by neighboring cities and kind of lump them or group them by that, reorganize it, if you will, like that, if you want.
Yeah, because I'm curious if they're coming from San Leandro, Dublin, Tracy, where are these kids coming from?
Just because we process them literally manually by hand, like Ms. Gates signs off, it's mostly going to be Dublin, Livermore, in the valley. But we will, thank you, Mr. Cates, for finding that out, and then we could do it too, Janet.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And then what are the demographics of the students that we see that are transferring in?
We could find that out too. Yeah, thank you.
So we talked you already talked a little bit about the fact that the capture rate for TK and K is being low, and you already answered my question, the fact that kindergarten is optional makes it very hard to convince people. And so my question is, what is our current sell on people for getting students into kindergarten? And then because for example, an issue that we sometimes have in Hayward is that Latino families very much respect education, and they very much respect the government. So if the government is telling you, oh, this is optional, then the mindset is, oh, well, then maybe it's not necessary. So what is our sell? What is our outreach? And how are we trying to reach these communities and these people to be no, we really do want you to still go?
Yeah, great question. I think anecdotally, that's why I say I think, the information that comes to me is about the longer day. It's about how can, parents typically are telling us that picking them up early, and some of them, a big portion, are going to after care programs. We have a Kids Club program. We have an after school program. Those get filled pretty quickly. So I believe that that's the biggest ask is, how can I keep my student on your campus longer? So that's part of this campaign is how do we get those barriers down and provide more slots to have kids stay.
All right. I also saw that there is a bill, I can't remember which assembly member or state senator is pushing it forward, but she is trying to make kindergarten into a mandatory year. And I think that might be something that we want to lend support to and kind of help push that through. And I have a feeling CTA and CSBA would probably back that as well. So can we look into how we might be able to assist that? But also, I wanted to look at our 5th through 8th grade. We have a 10% drop in the students that we are capturing. So do we know where those kids are going? Because like if you look at 3rd grade, we're really great at 3rd grade. It's 91%. And then suddenly by like 5th through 8th, they kind of vanish a little bit. So do we know where they're going, those grades?
So we do track that, and we don't have it broken down by grade. I can tell you, but we could do that. I can tell you that most of the students who withdraw from Pleasanton are moving in-state, out-of-state, or out of the country. It's like 15% this year, but it's been 10%, 8%, 13% are going to private school. So the biggest number is they're moving out of the district. I would have to look at by grade what the reason is for a student to leave. But you're right, we saw that too. That middle school grades, we saw the big decline in the capture rate.
Okay. Would there be a way for us to find out for the 15% that are going to private school? Is there a way for us to find out what is it specifically that they chose that is having them to go to private school? And then see if we actually do have that and they're just not aware, or if that's an issue.
Something we could look into, and it's not, and my mistake, it's private school / homeschool. I would think it's very few kids are actually homeschooled. There's some requirements where parents have to sign up with the state. We can look into that, Ms. Gates. Okay.
I have the numbers for the inter-district transfers for this year.
Would you like the numbers at this time?
Yeah.
The inter-district?
It's just this year's.
Okay.
So this is for inter-district transfers into the district this year. I'll just do some of the big ones. Our totals are, and these are the kids who came in this year. So we have, those numbers include some that were from previous years. We have 274 from this year. Some of the big ones, 21 from Sunol, because those kids come here after 8th grade. 12 from San Ramon, 81 from Livermore, 14 from Hayward, 66 from Dublin, 12 from Castro Valley, and then a lot of 1s and 2s.
Okay.
8 from Mount Diablo.
Because that kind of also gives us an idea of where to recruit. Okay.
Ms. Gates. For the record, that's Director of Student Services, Janet Gates.
So following up then, which actually kind of ties into this, my last two is one of the issues for Kids Club is not that for why we don't have room, is that we have had issues hiring people. And so it does pay for itself. So are we able to raise the pay for Kids Club to hire the staff to cover that, to expand it?
It's negotiated, but I don't know if you guys can help me with that. If I could just, before you answer that one, Ms. Graywall, it is recruitment. There are some very strict licensing requirements too for a child care program, before and after school program. So I know that's one of the barriers as well. Historically, facilities was a barrier. I'm calling them barriers, but things we had to think about. So I wanted to add those two things too. So the rate of pay.
Yeah, I'll take that one, and then Mrs. Graywell wants to add. So we have actually looked at our comparables, and we are very competitive and on the higher end. I think the challenge in growing the program, as Mr. Dialazo indicated, has been capacity building so that the organization has the same fidelity and growing into it. We have had some facility-related challenges, but I think that now those are abated with the space that's opening up in our elementary schools. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow. The market has changed. The labor market has significantly changed. So I think looking in the future, there are more opportunities than barriers. I think we can overcome them.
Okay.
Namarta, do you have anything to say?
The only thing I wanted to add is that we don't have a great deal of vacancies in this area because the department as a whole, the early expanded learning department, went through a reorganization a couple of years ago where the salaries were increased. So it's actually not as hard to fill the positions as it is to find facilities that match the positions and to have the people trained to the quality, the level that the director expects from the program, which is what we all want.
Thank you. Trustee Jones, I just wanted to add, if we think about things have to be negotiated, of course, and also we have to meet requirements for licensure and the like, what Mr. DiLazzo said. The promising news and all that, though, is the ability to pay. And what's important to note is that Kids Club does bring in revenue. So the fact of that revenue comes in, we're more able to pay more, which will bring in more students, which would increase revenue and happiness for families who want to enter PUSD.
All right. And then my last question is tied, like I said, into recruitment. So one of the things that's kind of helping us to balance out our declining enrollment is the interdistrict transferring. So I know, for example, that we've had some success with the sports clubs, for example, doing PVA. And so I was wondering what is our recruitment looking like in regards to pulling in these interdistrict transfers or things like that?
I'm very proud to say I think our brand helps the IDT. When I say the brand, PUSD, our teachers, our programs, our instruction, that brings in IDTs for sure. When PVA came on board, we were very aware of the, what's it called, like one of the not requirements, that's something that we could do with a contiguous county. So if a county touches our county, if it borders our county, or it's adjacent to our county, we can actually recruit or try to find students from other counties. That's what you're talking about. There are some sports programs that are not in Alameda County that are in PVA through the IDT process. And it's word of mouth too, just like any campaign. If there's a good product, as Maurice has taught me, don't chase the revenue so much, but just provide an amazing product. And PUSD is an amazing product. So we can leverage that, but aside from those kind of thoughts and feelings about PUSD, it's about getting out there and trying to figure out how do we promote and advertise and market like PVA, because that's a valuable program for kids like in sports, to your point, who need a flexible schedule. And I know Ms. Pereira has done some things to get IDTs. That number, actually, that's on the board right now, it's through these efforts that we've been talking about in the last 5 years that you've seen almost double the number of IDTs to PUSD. One of those reasons is we do have space. There was a time that we kind of denied some IDTs because we were so packed in terms of our classrooms, but we have an opportunity to accept them. So people are still applying. That's the good news.
Okay, thank you very much.
Trustee Brown.
Yeah, just a few questions. I'll try to be quick and call off the charts. So chart 7 and 8. So Hearst and Moore are typically our elementary schools under pressure, and one of the reasons we moved the boundaries. What's driving the higher out percentage on those two schools? Is that access to Spanish at Vintage Hills, or like what's driving that?
Trying to see which chart we're looking at here.
7 and 8. Sorry, I think.
I'd have to wait for him.
David, I think you're in
You're on
control
mute.
of this
Yeah, you're on
presentation, so go to slide 7, please.
7 are good. They're numbered in the bottom right corner.
Yeah.
Are you referring to page or?
Referring to the number, yeah, 7 and 8. What's driving the higher out numbers for Hurston Moore?
I do know, I mean, more there was some boundary shifts that we recently did, and so some of that could be the shifting of that. So that's one that I would look at, but I'm gonna see if you're aware of some of those.
So this particular chart, the factors that come to mind for me would be the number of overflow students, meaning the site facility-wise has reached its capacity. So some students would be overflowed, and I know Ms. Gates is looking for that number right now. And then the other factor is open enrollment. To your point, Trustee Brown, you said, do some parents want to go to, I don't know, the dual language immersion program? I don't know for a fact, but those are the two factors that would tell me a resident student attending another school. Those are the two main factors for us.
Yeah, I mean, Hurston Moore are smaller, so I don't know if it's because we've got less sections, we're having to overflow more students because we only have 2 grade 4 teachers, et
That's
cetera.
correct. It's facilities, but also sections.
Okay.
Not all students are grouped in the same grade, if you understand what that means. So meaning, yeah, so we would have 20 more kids at Hearst that have come to school after our FTE allocation, but they're not all in the same grade.
Okay. I know we spent a fair amount of time on slide 11, so it's half question, half comment. Do we anticipate that will continue to grow, or is that going to suffer the same matriculation problem that we have in general in the district? I.e., are we hitting 563 as a peak, and then because of lower birth rates in the surrounding districts that we're drawing from, is that going to decrease?
Well, I would go with, what I said earlier, that people are still applying to attend our district. Hard to tell how it's going to impact based on the birth rates. I would assume the birth rates are similar in Livermore, Dublin, Fremont, Hayward. I mean, I would just assume that because we're on the same county. That being said, again, I mean, the birth rates were dropping, or the enrollments were dropping the last 5 years, and we have more IDTs.
Okay. Slide 13, just calling this out. MFA versus SFD, very similar yield factors. So calling that out to the other trustees. The yield factors, K through 12, 0.716 versus 0.723. I know our community tends to always lean towards single SFD, but the yield factor from a school district perspective is about the same. In fact, it's slightly more if you look at it from K through 12. So I'm just saying if it factors into any other decisions the board might be called upon to look at.
And hold on, just for the benefit of, we're talking about a yield factor in report terms. It's basically for every 100 students, the single family detached units will yield about 72 children, and the multifamily attached units would yield same number, 72 children out of 100. So
Correct.
I'm just giving additional elaboration for those who in the audience might be going, what are we talking about? So just for clarification.
Yeah, no, I'm just
That's good information. Thank you.
calling.
Yes, thank you for
calling that
calling.
out.
Just for,
Can I add one?
and also, like for the transit-oriented development, high-end apartments, you only get approximately 20 students, and then apartments, rental units, it would be approximately 26 students
Right.
out of 100. Okay.
Right.
Can I add something?
Sure.
Can you hear me up? Okay. Keep in mind too, and I keep this on there on purpose, the numbers on the left are the real numbers that make the percentages on the right. So to be honest with you, in the sampling, not that many MFAs have been built in that time window. Usually it's about a 5-year window we look at. Look how many more apartments, because TODs are apartments, compared to even single family and the MFAs. It's not like they're building a lot of these. And it's all a matter of how you look at it. So unfortunately, these are the ones that they're building the most of. So they build a lot of units at one time, hundreds of units in a complex, but they're just not building a lot of condominiums and condos right now. In the future, it's mostly geared towards these, and you can see it by the sample sizes.
Okay, yeah, the reason I'm mentioning it, David, is because we just formed a 7-Eleven committee, and so for things that the board has a decision in, then that's why I'm calling it out. And then I had one last question here. Just trying to find it. So LSL, you were showing, is actually going to have the most growth from an elementary perspective. And okay, I'm out of questions. If I remember my other question, I'll come back. Thank you.
Okay.
Should have written them down. Don't have a pen tonight.
Okay, no worries. And if you remember your question, feel free to shout out. So I'm going to go with my questions. This is more of a follow-up question. I don't expect that we would have the answer now, and I don't even know if it's collected. Do we have information on the makeup of our families, of whether they're single-parent or two-parent families? And I didn't see it in the demographer report, so it's just a question.
We could probably do some research on that. We have, for every student enrolled, we have information of siblings. So it would take some time.
It's going to bring up to my next question in a minute. It's very interesting data that I was looking at. My other question is actually going to the report, and Lanita, I did send you the link in the email for the demography report. It was one of our attachments. I know you went through the slide deck. So I'm asking either whoever has control to pull up the report to page 60. And I'll give you a minute to pull it up.
Do you want me to do that?
Well, that's fine if you have control. I want to go to page 60 in the report.
Okay. Could you give me a minute? I do have to pull it up.
Sure.
Okay.
And while he's doing that, I just wanted to mention to the public and to my fellow trustees, the demographer report has some additional new sections of data that I had not seen in years past. One is this tapestry segmentation area profile. It looks like a different company, ESRI, and it talks about the makeup of our community and our homes. And so looking at our community here in Pleasanton and looking at this data was really, really interesting for me because it really hones in on how we've talked informally of how we have like this little bubble in Pleasanton where we have our families that might have 2-income families, and the demographics of our students and where we live, obviously it's a higher social economic status compared to, like, for example, Hayward and Suchworth. But I'm thinking about it from like my standpoint with my son, who is a senior and he's looking at colleges and whatnot. I keep telling him, okay, we live in a little bubble where we have, a lot of access to different opportunities that other students may not have if they are growing up in Oakland or in Hayward. For example, kids in high school, a lot of them get cars, whereas other students might just be biking to school or going on a bus. But so in this report, it shows our makeup And the bottom chart, it shows how we have this tapestry of how our demographics of our community and how it's slated with typically what our community is made up with, and then comparing it nationally. So once again, it's page 60 in the report. At least that's what I have, or it's on page 60 on the, I'm sorry, on the PDF file.
Can you see my screen on the screen? I'm sharing it.
I apologize. It's page 57 in the report.
Okay.
The PDF file's a different number. Yeah, right there, right there.
Yeah.
If you could blow it up to the bottom chart and then scroll over. So what you'll see, this report really stood out to me. So, and this is just a comment. It has different categories that was very specific to this report. So you may have to explain it to the group, but you have professional pride, savvy suburbanites, enterprising professionals, and top tier. And you'll see like the percentages of like where our, when I was looking at this chart, like where it breaks out for our homes, it looks like savvy suburbanites, professional pride was like 24%, and savvy suburbanites is 20% of our makeup. But then when you compare it to the national trend, it's much lower. And so what does this mean? Like when you look at professional pride families, they're married, high income tech, highly educated families, and that's 24% of our makeup. And then savvy suburbanites are older neighborhoods, but typically professionals. So it's just, I don't know if you can explain this report a little bit better than I kind of summarized it briefly, but to me it was very eye-opening in terms of the structures of our homes and what we have here in Pleasanton.
Yeah, I'll do my best to summarize it. These are reports. Esri is the parent company that does all the GIS software. They have a division that's worldwide in demographics. And through their software, we have tools where we can take your district boundaries and, overlay what they call their tapestry segments here. And you could go online and Google these names and go type in Esri tapestry segmentation and put in these number letters here, and it'll give you what they mean, what they represent. In your district's case, the majority are what they call professional pride. It would give you a little paragraph. It shows you describing that grouping. And then, like you said, if you want to look at it in comparison to the whole U.S., which, kind of gets watered down a little bit there. But this is, just more looking at your what's unique to your area. They come up, I have no control over the names that they call these things. So some people sometimes don't like, being labeled or called these things, but this is the process they go through. And it's just a deeper dive into the demographics, giving you more of a mental picture, if you will, rather than just looking at race or ethnicity or test scores or whatever. This kind of gives you a different look, a different kind of complexion, if you will, to everyone's communities. And I would probably just recommend, if you want to really do a nice rabbit hole dive, is to Google this, and you'll really get some real good information on each of these categories. I just don't have, there's so many of them, I can't run down each one for you.
No, that's fine. So I was doing that because I did do that deep dig dive. And it's, so for example, the enterprise and professionals, it says it's young, educated, single, married, working professional residents within neighborhoods having a median age of like 33 years old. So for me, that what I found to be really interesting is that I do feel like sometimes when we look at our student population and we make comments about how it's so hard to afford to live here, and you think about a lot of our students' families have two-income families and very, very fortunate when they go to college, they might have like a different exposure and a different experience. And so it's just something that I think it's important that we be aware of when we're looking at, as a board, we're making decisions on options for housing, or we're taking a look at, you know, different investment properties, or we're looking at different ways to engage with our TK families. So anyway, that was just a question I had. And then I think my last question is on PVA. This is really more of just a follow-up. I noticed it was in the report, we have roughly 200 students that we're attracting through our schools with PVA. And so I think this is really more for you, Ed, if we could get a follow-up. I can't remember how many students we are attracting from other districts for PVA. I think that's important because we're talking about different ways to attract enrollment, and I just don't remember that offhand.
Yeah.
So if we could get that.
I don't remember either, but we have it.
Okay, great. Any other questions before we move on?
I remember my other question. The 47%, I know they've been rolling back the eligibility period for the 4 year for the TK. Are we at the final milestone for that?
Yes, great question. The rollout for TK took a few years, I think 4 years. It was like in 3-month increments. Excuse me. So yes, it is now any student who turns 4 by September 1, period,
Right.
is eligible for TK.
Is that driving some of that 47% that you mentioned?
Good. Yes, sir. Yeah. So more students eligible. We don't know if parents know that they're eligible, so that could be driving that down.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
All right. Final addendum there. I know all my kids when they turn 4 went and had to get shots when they turned 4. Maybe we can do a partnership with the Kaiser or something. Oh, you got your 4-year-old shot. Oh, by the way, your kid is now eligible for TK at PUSD. I don't know. Maybe that's a stretch.
There is a Shots for School campaign by our healthcare agencies, so we can check in with that too. That's a great
creative
point.
All right, thank you. That's it.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, with that, we're going to open it to public comment. Do we have any comments for public comment? And if you would like to come on up. Yes, Bill Foley. Okay, thank you.
You can comment on those if you want. Hello,
Did you want to comment?
do you want me to?
Or if
give
you're
a-
able, okay, I guess if you're able to provide an answer.
Well, just to remember again, these are the resident counts of students in those zones. So we're not saying that they're not going to other programs in the school, just that the numbers, when I show those maps and the numbers, they're not all going to those schools. Those are just the resident counts in your majority zones. Certain programs and schools do still pull kids to those others. We do have that in the information, the student data we receive. So all of those students are still there. We're looking more at the broader scope of general trends in the district but we do have that data available, and I'm sure the district does as well, the students in those other programs. Just when we present them, we're looking at residentially by K through 12, how they fall within your zones, regardless of what school or program they go to.
I can add too.
Sure, thank you.
So we do keep track of TK-12 enrollment by program. So we know how many kids are in special day class, mild moderate, special day class, ESN, so forth. We also keep track of students who don't fall into the LCFF count for ADA purposes. So we have infant students, we have preschoolers. To Mr. Foley's point, just answering the question. We do keep track of those numbers. This is the demographer's report here, but we have internal reports that track all those numbers.
Okay, thank you. So what we're going to do now is move to comments before we move to the next section. This is not an actual voting item. So comments before we move on.
So first, I want to thank you guys for answering our questions and for doing this report, because I know we asked you a lot of them tonight. Because this is important. This impacts not just the programs we provide, but the staff that we have to do it. I think the big thing from the board tonight was just us wanting to, and you said it yourself, just make sure that we're figuring out how can we resolve the gap between like TK through first compared to third, and then just really make sure of like how are we not only capturing and keeping these kids in, because you're right, you said it yourself, the sooner we get them, the longer they stay. So I think that is definitely a priority for us.
Yeah, and just tagging on to that, I think it's so painful to do these cuts. And so whatever we can do to capture these kids, you know, even if it's painful, you know, even if it's not perfect, I'd rather get these kids and figure it out later instead of making cuts. So thank you for your hard work. I know you've been working hard behind the scenes.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. I think there's urgency here. I think all the things you both said, Trustee Carrion and Trustee Jones, thank you.
And I just would like to conclude as well and thank the time for this presentation. I actually appreciate the extensive report and the components that have been added over the years, being able to compare what has been provided in years past. And I do feel that this was one of the most comprehensive demographer reports that we've received, especially the analyses, even going, drilling down into contracted and gross rent averages, and it looks like you're pulling a lot of resources and report generations. And I already shared my interest peak in the demographics of our community. But that said, I would also like to articulate that in general, sometimes there's been like a off note of saying, you know, it's very difficult for demographer reports because it's a projection and going to 7 years, that it's not always accurate. And so it's troublesome sometimes to try to interpret the report because some of the information obviously changes and evolves, but I do feel like this is the most comprehensive report we've received, and I look forward to using this information to help with some of the things that we're deciding as moving in the direction as a board. So thank you very much for taking your time tonight, David, late night via Zoom. So.
No, thank you. I
Oh,
appreciate
sorry.
it.
Okay, yes, Trustee Jones.
I also just want to make sure that it's clear for the public that the numbers that you see does not mean that the school is empty. That's not what these numbers mean, which has been some misinformation that has come out to the public. We have as many teachers as we have students. So that means that it's not like that's one of the problems that we're having, is that as enrollment goes down, it's not that these schools are at max capacity, it's that we would need to hire more teachers to fill those rooms, to expand into those spaces. So I've heard it out there before, we are not at max capacity. Our school sites are, let me rephrase that. Our school sites are at max capacity in the sense that we only have as many teachers as students in space for that.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important clarification to make. Any other concluding comments? Okay, well, if not, then we will move on to Agenda B, which is a report, discussion, review of PUSD's fiscal conditions and ongoing district efforts. I did not have a chance to talk to you ahead of time, Ahmad, so I'm guessing and thinking that perhaps if we do, it looks like there's 15 minutes slated for the district fiscal conditions, enrollment, decline, first interim budget and state budget. Are you thinking to do the presentation, then do Q&A, and then we go on next word? Okay, so then the way I will do this is we'll go through the first presentation, we'll take it back to the board for questions, open it for public comment, then bring it back for comments, and then we'll go on to the next items.
Great. Yes,
Okay.
that's the what I was thinking. I'm going to bring it up. Just give me a second. So good evening. Tonight we'll be presenting a significant amount of information, both of our fiscal condition, and some of this is repeat, others is new information, but we hope to be able to answer questions and have some discussions regarding these really important issues. Again, we kind of broke it out in those 5 segments, and we wanted to do it so that it doesn't become this very long and complex report, rather than kind of divide it in these sections so we can answer questions and then come back and have further discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Ahmad. Just going back to the agenda again, we're going to try to time it to each one of those segments. You see 15 minutes for the first one, 10 for the second for the presentation. So we're running the timer to keep on track. Thank you.
Yeah, and some of it, I mean, if we can do it quicker, we will. So the district's fiscal condition, we have been talking about this all year. There's no surprises here that declining enrollment in the prior years and projected years will mean lower revenues. The district has been spending more than it's been taking in over the years, and that has eroded our reserves. During this same time period, we have been facing increasing cost in all categories, in salaries, healthcare, and other operating areas of the district. During the last 5 years, as the pandemic has ended, a significant amount of one-time funds has gone away. The state has introduced some other new programs that we'll be talking about when we update you on the state report. PUSD is what we consider a low-funded LCFF school district, and we'll go into the dynamics of that. If anyone is interested to learn more about school finance and the local control funding formula, we provide you a link to a CASBO document that does a very good job in explaining the district's, all school districts' finances. So again, I'm not going to go through it. We just got a very in-depth report on enrollment, but enrollment is tied to funding. We are funded by the average daily attendance, and as enrollment drops, our ADA drops, and then that impacts our funding. The state has created a kind of a 3-year balance, which has dampened the sudden impact, but the overall declines do catch up on our LCFF funding as we decline. This is a new slide, and what I did here is this is the first interim assumptions, and those assumptions were based on the data that we had and a little bit of adjustments by staff, knowing some declines in enrollment. And so you can see that for 26-27, we had about 12,572. The demographer is projecting 12,615, so we're very close. But the following year, we were projecting, based on prior data, a flattening of enrollment, but we see that there is going to be another drop. And so in second interim, we will have to update our projections for 27-28, and we will include the new figures. The district does have very good attendance, and so that does help us overall in that 95 to 96 percentile, depending on the grade level. We've been talking about that deficit spending, and here graphically you can see that we were deficit spending prior to the pandemic. At the pandemic year, obviously school districts did not spend as much, so we were able to increase that, but that decline you can see in blue, and then we're in that critical stage right now that we're projecting to dip below that, and that's the reason we need to make a lot of the corrections that we are going through. The green is the restricted, and you can see also the spend down. That's typical that grants and other type of restricted dollars come in and are spent down over time, and you can see that as well through these multi-years. We've talked about this, that because the district's makeup of funding in LCFF is driven by the base funding plus additional funding for what is called supplemental and concentration, depending on the makeup of the demographics of the community with low socioeconomic, EL, and homeless and foster youth, you get additional LCFF dollars. The district is about 17%, which is kind of consistent with the other school districts in the Tri-Valley area. Our makeup of LCFF dollars is lower, and then our other funding, which is the light green, local, federal, and other state, is also pretty much in line with the other Tri-Valley school districts in Alameda. School districts with higher funding either have a greater LCFF because of that makeup of students, or they're able to compensate that with additional local or grant funds, state funds. And for example, at Piedmont, you have a low LCFF, but you have a very significant partial tax, which kind of boosts them up. And then you look at some of the other districts like Berkeley and Oakland, they may have a combination of more LCFF and more local funding. We've talked about this significantly, about increasing cost and salaries and pension, but significantly you can see the growth of cost in health and welfare as the district has provided that for our employees, as well as other cost factors that have significantly increased over time, which is utilities, insurance costs, and our contribution to special education. That has seen a significant increase statewide. One of the data that we were looking at in special education is while the overall enrollment in the state has declined, the number of special ed students since the pandemic has increased. And so you have an increasing number of special ed students and you have increasing needs, and that's been kind of the culminating effect of cost increasing. This again, we reviewed our first interim in a lot of detail back in December, but just as a reminder, we updated the first interim. The first interim position has improved since the adopted budget, but it didn't improve as much as we were hoping at the 45-day budget. And at this moment in time, we are projecting an ending fund balance of $2.5 million. The district, that does not include the $11 million the district moved in for its committed and stabilization funds. And the way that this that the county and state is interpreting those $11 million is we can't count it towards our reserves once we dip in it, because it's been restricted for certain expenditures, and the stabilization fund can only be accessed by approval of the state and not for ongoing expenditures. And so for that reason, we are now certified as negative certification, which requires additional county and state oversight, which we'll talk about in a little bit. The restricted side, you can see the contribution that we make to special education and routine restricted maintenance because it's required. And we do have a balance because those grant programs will be spent over the next several years. This graph, I just wanted to kind of make a note. You've seen this before. This is our current year where we're projecting. If we do close better, those will get reflected in the future years. But our goal is to, with the reductions, and the reductions of about $11.2 million are built into it, was to get our net increase and decrease to zero. And we're very close to doing that. We still do have a negative ending fund balance, and that's something we have to work to eliminate. But you also will see that the deficit returns the next year because some of those reductions were one time, and the declining enrollment and adjustments in COLA that we had to make are not keeping up. The deficit spending is coming back, and so that's something we're going to have to work on. Again, I just wanted to mention that the reductions are built into this model. Again, you've seen this. This is a breakdown of where our ending fund balance, and so we talked about there are restricted dollars and programs that we have. We have some monies tied up in transit and in non-spendables. And then this is the bulk of the $11 million and where they're allocated. Next year, we will tap into the $882,000 for the PARS payment. If there are textbook adoptions and other things, we can tap into the $2 million for that. And we are looking into and working with curriculum instruction to better understand the needs for next year. And if any of that offsets pressure from the general fund, we'll make those adjustments in the second interim as well. And then you can see where we're ending with that $2.5 million of in our reserves negative because we're not whole yet. Okay, so now some new information. Again, it may not be new because I know you're keeping up with the news, but we'll kind of go through it in terms of what it means for PUSD. We are very early in the state budgeting process. The governor has unveiled his budget. He will provide what is called trailer bill language in February, which will detail out some of those programs. And between now and May, there's going to be a lot of legislative action. And there will be what is called a May revise, where the governor will update his budget proposals based on up-to-date information and fiscal information from the state. And then we go to this period of, the legislator will have to, and the governor will have to come to an agreement on a budget. And that usually takes about a month and a half to the end of June to occur. We have to create our budget and submit it for approval by the end of June. And so that's why they're sometimes not fully aligned, because we have to make assumptions based on where the state is going to be, and we typically have to make more conservative assumptions in our budgeting plan. So the good news is that due to personal income and corporate tax projections, the state is going to have more revenues in this 3-year window period than they projected. And so that is going to mean through the Proposition 98 minimum guarantee for K-14 schools, more money, about almost $22 billion more money. Now, some of those revenues are not predictable because they are tied to taxes and personal income tax driven by the stock market. And so due to that volatility of it, the governor is taking a conservative budgeting approach. By law, by the Constitution, he has to put money away in the rainy day fund. But in addition to doing that, he's also budgeting less in the Prop 98 guarantee because he's unsure about the revenues and he's calling for a future settle-up payments. And so there is a certain amount of controversy and debate over the approach, and we'll have to see how the next months go and where we end up with the budget in regards to the governor's approach on this settle-up. Looking at some of the other details, the cost of living adjustment, which is applied to the LCFF formula and to the programs outside of LCFF, right now is projected at 2.41%. There is one more data piece that we are looking at, and that will then finalize the COLA, the statutory COLA, in May. We had assumed 2.53%, and so we will be making that adjustment in the second interim. We are also projecting a slight improvement in enrollment. So at the end, we'll see how those two balance out at our second interim, but there'll be some minor adjustments in that area. Some other good news in the budget is that the governor continues to invest in the ELOP program, which is the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program. And one of the issues has always been that rate 2, which PUSD falls under because our unduplicated student count is less than 50%, has kind of been in flux. And so this will kind of put it at that 1,800 students, which is about $225 more than we currently get, which will translate to about $217,000 annually. And that is it's a restricted fund, but it'll help that program and stabilize some of the cost there. In special education, the governor, in addition to 2.41% COLA, he is also recommending additional investment to raise the AB 602 base, so it's the same throughout all the SELPAs in California, and we are one of those that is at the minimum base, and so that will help our SELPA and help our districts, and we're anticipating around $750,000 more annually, and those are restricted for special education, and we know that that's been an area of increasing cost, and we're happy to see those additional dollars. The governor is additionally proposing to spend $1 billion in ongoing funds for community schools. And PUSD, under the current program, does not qualify for community schools because it requires a UPP of greater than 50%, but we'll have to see where the trailer bill language is on the new proposal. Almost done. On the other funding sources, there is significant one-time dollars that the governor has proposed in the student support and professional development discretionary block grant. This is good news for us. We do caution that this is highly variable and may change. It may become less. It may move to other areas of priority or change just because of the revenues that the state is projecting. But we do expect to receive some type of one-time money. He's also projecting to fund the Learning and Recovery Block Grant. We had that in our budget, funding for child nutrition, early childhood, continued funding for career tech. He's also proposing to put money into school facilities, which is good because we are in line and have applied for those funds. And there are other one-time investments. Additionally, the governor has proposed a change in the governance of education and moving more control to the State Board of Education and revising the role of the California Department of Education. So we'll have to see how that goes as well. No immediate impacts, but I'm sure there'll be medium and long-term impacts to those changes. Again, it's just a visual of a little bit of other dollars. Again, we talked about there's also a little bit more money for transportation and career tech and other kind of programs that have helped with professional development and attracting staff into our profession. So with that, I'll be happy to take questions on this section of the report.
Yes. Questions, trustees? Who would like to start? Justin? Putting you on the spot.
Sure. You mentioned on slide 9 about the contribution to special education. One thing I'd like to see is the number. You mentioned that the cost per student has gone up over that time period, but it would be good to see a chart that shows the additional detail that you're alluding to in terms of cost per student and number of students that we have in special education. Because as a percentage, I hadn't thought it had changed over that time period. Then in terms of a question, more specifically, the 11 million that we put into the that is committed with the 7.1 as the stabilization and then the 2 million for textbooks, yada, yada, yada. That is in the general, that's on the restricted side, essentially, and does or does not count towards the 3%.
It currently is in the general fund, Fund 01, and actually, I'm happy you brought that up. If we are able to have our adjusted ending fund balance be zero, the portion that we have allocated to the stabilization fund, the $7 million, will count to the 3%. And so if we were to get to a balanced budget that we are not dipping into it, we would meet the requirements of positive certification. We still would not have a lot of flexibility, because what the state is saying is, you've committed that to a stabilization fund that you really cannot access unless you go back to the state and get approval. And the state has said you can't spend it on ongoing. So as long as it sits there, you can count it towards your 3%. But if you're dipping below it, you're kind of utilizing it and you're not supposed to be using it. I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, it is. It was essentially, well, why do we do it if we can't count on it? And so I think you've explained it. It's because the unrestricted ending balance is less than zero. Therefore, you can't count that towards the.
Correct. If we get back to zero, we can count. So that's one of the reasons we did it. The other reason we did it was this, in terms of a cash flow and ending fund balance, we're borrowing from ourselves, which is a better thing to do than to not have there. Now, we are working closely with our fiscal advisor, which has been appointed from the county, and her advice has now come to us that the district should move that to a Fund 17. It still will be on our balance sheets. It still will, count towards our reserves if we meet those requirements, but it won't be commingled into a Fund 0 in terms of optics. It's like in its own fund. You can point to it, and in terms of a balance sheet, it's a little bit cleaner. So we'll get that recommendation, and then we'll bring it to the board probably at second interim.
Is that for the 11 million or the 7.1?
It's it could be for the whole $11 million, or it could just be for the 7. You could have committed funds in both Fund 17 or in the general fund. If you took it to Fund 17 and you wanted to use it, then you'd transfer it back to the general fund to utilize it.
Okay. And then the minus 2.5 for the current year and minus 1.4 for next year and the minus 3 for the year after. All of those are based on first interim, so it doesn't take into account the 300K or whatever from the COLA coming down. It also doesn't include some of the other things that you're mentioning.
Correct. So we will, in second interim, we'll update those things. We will only probably include the items, we'll have to look at what the message is from the county and state level as to what they would recommend districts to include. I do know that they have never wanted districts to include very volatile revenues where the state is not really locked down in, so like the one-time monies and some of those, they will not want districts to include, but the cost of living, potentially the additional dollars from the ELOP and the special ed, probably there might be recommendations to include those. And so whatever those recommendations are from the state, we will include them.
Okay, so ELOP, special ed, and COLA is what likely would go into second interim. And then when would you be bringing second interim to the board?
That will come to the board at March. The second interim covers expenditures to the end of January, so it's more updated information. Then we go and look at those projections and update all our projections, and we will bring that for the board's review on, I believe the board meeting is on March 12th.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
Okay, next.
All right, so as Trustee Brown brought up, so enrollment might be going down, but the cost of students overall in general too, like students in general, has gone up as well, but we're also getting hit by not getting full COLA because of declining enrollment, correct?
So the COLA is a formula on the per student allocation. And so correct. So for people think about, okay, last year you got $100 million in, let's say, LCFF funding. If there's going to be a 2% increase, it's not the 100 million times the 2% increase. It's the formula, the 2% applies to the per student. So if you're declining enrollment, you will now multiply it by your new enrollment average daily of the 3 years. And so you may get a 2% COLA, but you may be at $98 million, right, because of that. And that is the effect that's happening to the district.
All right. If you go to page 6 on your slides, the enrollment projection that you have is currently, so if you look at 27, 28, you have that as the enrollment number, and then you have the projected one as being lower. But in the prior 2 years, the update has actually ended up being higher, especially if you look at this one's. So can we potentially anticipate that 27, 28 might actually be higher as well?
So the we do look at that, and we'll look at it from a couple of angles. Again, that the information that the demographer takes, he's looking at all the factors that you talked about. During the year, you know, from the time the data, the snapshot, which is usually in that October to currently, sometimes we pick up kids, sometimes we lose kids. We'll look at that. The other data piece that we start to look at is kindergarten registration and how we are doing in TK and kindergarten registration. If we see we have a strong kindergarten, early kindergarten registration, we may adjust the numbers. But typically on that second and third year out, we will use the demographer's information. If we make any type of adjustments, it will only be on the next year's because we can see what the rollover data is going to be.
Okay. So it definitely sounds like we need to keep pushing our legislators to keep COLA higher then. My last one is, look, because you brought up community schools, the expansion of the $1 billion. Are we looking, or how are we doing it, looking into applying as a regional school district or a regional school through SELPA as a way of using the entire region's numbers instead of just Pleasanton?
Thank you, Trustee Jones. So we looked into the language of community schools, and it does say LEA or consortium. To your point, SELPA is a consortium. For folks that don't know, it's the Special Education Local Planning Area. Tri-Valley SELPA is what it's officially called for us. And so what that means is that we share the services of the Tri-Valley SELPA with Dublin, Livermore, Pleasanton, Mountain House, Sunol, and Alameda County Community Day School. Not the same as community schools. So as far as I know, we would not qualify as either an LEA or a consortium based on the criteria that is listed in the CDE. The biggest criteria is, and Ahmed can correct me, 50% or 55%. 50% of the LEA or the consortium has to be unduplicated. So our school district alone and in the SELPA does not meet that criteria.
All right, thank you.
Okay, for slide 11, it says includes planned reductions for 26, 27. Like about 5 million of those are like negotiated. So if we're not able to do that, which numbers would increase? Would it be like 26, 27 would be like minus 5 million or something?
So yes, we have included the total amount that the board approved, noting that about 50% of them need to be negotiated. So, if we were not able to achieve those negotiations, we would need to find those reductions in other ways, and we'd bring those options to the school board for consideration.
Okay, my last question is about the COLA. So 2.41, let's say, is the COLA. A lot of people make the assumption that that means it's a cost of living raise for them. It should be right, Tell me about how do you spend the COLA?
So, great question. So let's just say everything was equal. We were not in declining enrollment, and the we got the 2.41%, and it translated to about 2.4% of more dollars for the district. The district has ongoing cost increases that it has to consider, and so that includes the typical step and column movement of staff, and so that is increasing our cost. The district typically has higher insurance and utility costs. So those new dollars a lot of times are being spoken for by just the natural operation of a school district from one year to another. And so that's what makes it so difficult to be able to take those dollars and translate it to an equal amount in terms of new additional compensation for staff.
Okay. I just have one simple question, and I think actually fellow trustee Brown already asked it. I was under the impression that our special percentage of students with disabilities was quite low, like 9–10% of the entire district. But then the report is showing that that the costs have increased. So, but I remember years past, the percentage of special, students with disabilities was more like 12 or 13%. So can we get a little clarification on what exactly we're referring to on the increase of costs with students with disabilities? Is it more of, is that falling in that bucket of, like, for example, litigation or something of that sort? Because I'm just trying to get clarification on that.
So two things. One, what I indicated was in the state, the overall enrollment has declined. However, the number of special ed students has increased. I believe that is the same for PUSD. We can verify and bring those numbers. So at the same time, the per student expenditures on special ed have increased significantly. And so while we still may be at the about 9 to 10% of our student population is special ed, the amount that we're spending per student has increased. And that is mainly driven by the type of services, the intensity of services, and so on. So we'll bring some of that historical data. And then again, not all of it is tied to that. Some of it is tied to increased costs. So our salary cost has increased, our benefits have increased, and so those costs are naturally also increasing in special ed. So if you, as we compensate more for our teachers and support staff. So it's a combination, but the per student breakdown has increased. The county shared that data with us a couple of months ago, and we can definitely bring that back and share it with you all.
So as a second question to that, I'm just doing a rough estimation. So it looks like in the last 7 years, the cost contribution is 15 million. Is that what I'm reading right? Has increased by 15 million?
Approximately, yeah. It's hard to read from that.
Yeah. So I apologize if I'm asking this again, but I thought you had given a breakdown of what those costs were. So if you could go back and look, and then we do have a finance committee meeting next week, so that might be a great spot where we could, if possible, we could get that information, because that's a huge jump. And I know for a fact, and I think all of us were here with special education doing this huge presentation about the classification of our students going down significantly. I know that was a huge celebration in the last year, and so the fact that our costs have increased so significantly, I think we've touched on it somewhat, and I think it would be good to zero in on that, because that might help us look at some other mitigation factors that might need to be addressed, or that we're not necessarily thinking about in terms of some of these costs. Because I think that's really important. So if we could follow up, that would be great. And I don't know if Mr. DeLazio, you have anything else to add, but.
No, I understand the question. We'll do some data digging and provide it to the board.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any other questions? Yeah, I'm getting to that. I was just going to get to that. So now we're going to go to public comment for this item, which is on the presentation that Ahmad just did. Is it for this particular presentation, or is it a different presentation?
It says budget. So
Okay.
Tom, okay, great. So Thomas Choi? Yep, there you go.
All right, thank you. Good evening, board members. My name is Thomas Choi. I'm speaking as a parent of a current kindergartner and also an incoming 2026 TK student. I'm also an attorney. I've been listening closely and carefully to discussion today about declining enrollment. While there's some hope regarding mandatory kindergarten legislation championed by Senator Susan Rubio, looking at the legislative history, including Governor Gavin Newsom's previous vetoes due to budget constraints, it seems unlikely that a state mandate will solve our enrollment issues in the near term. Therefore, I believe our most viable strategy is outreach and attraction. We need to focus on the quality of our TK and kindergarten programs to win families over compared to the private school options. However, the narrative of massive budget cuts that we are discussing tonight is of deep concern to many, many parents, including myself. It creates the perception of instability in our school district. I believe that the message to parents should be that we are investing in our TK and kindergarten programs to make them the best choice in the county and not cutting them back. That is why I'm concerned by the information on slide 27, which explicitly proposes $5.3 million in cuts to certificated salaries and over $1.6 million to cuts in classified salaries. My concern is that cuts of this magnitude contradict the message of investment and inevitably degrades our student programs. So I have 2 points tonight that I'd like you all to keep in mind. First, regarding class size and staff quality. Speaking personally, class size and quality of staff were critical factors for my family. Coming from a preschool environment with very small groups, the jump to a public school class of 24 students for a 4 or 5-year-old is very intimidating. That's why the classified instructional aides are so essential. They provide the hands-on support that make larger class size manageable for such young kids. The quality of our staff is our biggest asset. To attract and retain high-quality educators and aides our students need, we must show that we are investing in them through stability and meaningful professional development and not reducing their rank. My concern is that significant cuts here will destroy the talent pipeline our youngest students rely on. Furthermore, slide 8 lists LCFF grade span adjustments as a key revenue source. As you know, under California Education Code, this funding is specifically conditioned on maintaining TK to grade 3 class sizes of 24:1. If we overcrowd classrooms to save money, we risk losing that state revenue, which could end up costing the district more than the cuts actually end up saving. Second, regarding equity, I ask that you ensure that the cuts are shared fairly. Specifically, look closely at the balance of reduction between central office administration and classroom educators. The consequence of inequality is clear. If the burden falls disproportionately on our classrooms while management remains untouched, we risk damaging morale and driving our best teachers to other districts. I know we all share the goal of reversing enrollment trends, so let's ensure that our budget choices reflect that by keeping resources in the classroom where it matters most to our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll close public comment on this item and move to comments before we move to the next presentation. Fellow trustees, any comments? Okay, so I think my only comment would state that I appreciate the presentation in terms of, we know that the governor's budget is an evolving process, and we have a lot of variables that are going to impact how we move forward. But thank you very much, Ahmad, and your team for putting this together. And so with that, we'll go to the, yes, and Trustee Brown, yes, your comment.
So, obviously, we can't directly address public comment, but I will say that there is public information at our last set of meetings that shows the proportion of the cuts affecting classified versus certificated versus management. So that is publicly available information. So I just wanted to state that.
Yes, thank you. Okay, and with that, we'll go to our next presentation.
Which is President Kashi, Fiscal Oversight, Risk Assessment, and Compliance Requirements presentation for 10 minutes.
Okay, I'll try to beat this one. So as we discussed earlier, the district submitted a negative certification, and so that brings additional fiscal oversight from the Alameda County Office of Ed, who has responsibility on behalf of the state. And with that negative certification, it triggers additional oversight. And so we now have a fiscal advisor, and she is really top-notch. She used to be a former deputy superintendent at Marin County and has extensive accounting background and has been a wealth of knowledge and information to the team. She meets weekly with our Director of Fiscal Services, and I meet with her regularly, and she also talks independently to our superintendent. The district will also be is currently going through a fiscal health risk analysis by the state's arm of FCMAT. And next week they will be here and interviewing both management and staff and site management on a whole variety of risk factors that we'll talk about shortly. The district will also be preparing most likely a third interim report, which will be similar to the first and second report. It will be another report that will be prepared for expenditures, I believe, through May 30th? April 31st. So again, and it's a good exercise. The county has indicated that a lot of times once school districts start doing third interims, even if they don't have to do it, they start doing it. It helps prepare for budget development and estimated actuals. Additionally, all labor agreements will now have to be submitted to the county 10 days before the board takes action. The county will opine on them before the board takes action on any labor agreement. So that is another trigger. Again, these next two slides, you will see what it means to be positive, qualified, and negative. And again, there is a significant amount of discretion that the county office has once we are negative. And a lot of those have been triggered, but there are stronger second level interventions for negative districts that the county and the state can impose, including developing and imposing district budget revisions in consultation with the state superintendent of public instructions and the local governing board, overturning local governing board action. So they do have stronger level of authority, but I think at the moment, the steps they are taking are the ones that I've told you. They are confident that with the actions of the board and the current management that we will be able to hopefully leave being a negative certified and go back to qualified and positive certification. The FCMAT process is a very thorough process. They are looking holistically at a host of district functions, both in the fiscal, special education, facilities, operations, areas, human resources, to ensure that we have the systems in place to be successful. And they will highlight the areas that the district has weaknesses, and they will provide a robust report and presentation to the board. If the district wants to engage in further areas for them to concentrate at, those type of reports and analysis will, the district can engage with FCMAT, and there's a cost to it, but this level of report is triggered and is paid through the state for them to come and do it. And it's a significant heavy lift both for staff and the FCMAT team. They will score the district, and they will tell us if we're high risk, moderate risk, low risk. And again, the fiscal component of it will probably be one of the ones that they will be significantly looking at, as well as other areas. And so, again, that report will be provided to the board, and we look forward to receiving it and concentrating on areas that they identify as high risk.
Thank you, Ahmad. You're done with this section. I'm going to just add a few points here. We met with the FICMAT team. I want to compliment business. They gave us a compliment. I think I wrote you that we got everything on time and well done with all the information that we had to do, and that's for all the district administrators too. One thing I want to just instill is that obviously it's anxiety provoking to be in negative status. At the same time, it's a real opportunity to have FICMAT come in really impressed with the team. They're very positive, we're very transparent, we're embracing them and looking for opportunities for improvement. I want to go beyond the measures of the fiscal health assessment and really look at particular areas that we can improve, because I've been saying all along, we have to improve our systems, we have to improve our processes. When you have a reserve of down to 3%, any shimmy or variance can be very deleterious to things like cash flow. And I talked about a vision with FICMAT, and they got excited about it and very positive about this. Is just an example of where we are looking at plans to actuals, monitoring our budgets monthly, that every single budget manager knows what is encumbered, knows what it is spent, know what the run rate is, knows that we don't sandbag and spend it or lose it, and knows also that we don't blow our plan and we see the red coming way in advance without any surprises. And I just want to sum up by teaching and instilling on all the leadership that manages money that in their goals it's time, energy, and money. Finance is data, and it is a measure of effort and time against things like, for things like equity, increasing attendance, working on enrollment. So I want to take it not just to managing with money well. That's just, you know, like I say, that's just a ticket into the party. The party really is leading with fiscal data that's accurate and focused.
All right, thank you, Dr. Geisels and Ahmad. I'm going to bring it back to the board for questions.
You said that the FHRA review will be presented to the board March 2026. So that'll be, so the public will have an opportunity to see the same fiscal health report, correct?
Correct. It will be presented to the board, and it will be a public document available to the public both on our website and on the state's website.
Yeah. The other thing I liked about what you presented is the note about it being a comprehensive coverage with 20 sections that covers not just the fiscal functions but the processes. That's the piece that I wanted. So anyway, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I just have one question actually on this slide. Is there any other information you can provide what that might look like for the labor agreement oversight and what that might impact with negotiations, or just clarification on what is meant by that?
So again, you know, we are negative certification. We that means that being able to meet our financial obligations with a negative territory is at risk, and so any type of agreement that we make that has a fiscal component of it, the county is going to opine on that before the board takes action, because their responsibility is to make sure of the solvency of the district and its ability to meet its obligations. And so they will be, that is their responsibility, and any type of agreement needs to be, will be reviewed by them before it comes to the board.
Okay. I think that's important to have that clarified, and I'm glad that you answered that, because that is something that will be a different process than what we're accustomed to. Anything else? It looks like, just to reiterate, also the third interim report is new, because we haven't had that before, correct?
Correct. That will be an addition. And we're anticipating it. Again, they have not officially told us, but in our conversations with them, that is something that they're going to request.
So I think my only other question is, do we have a timeline of for our district to be in negative certification? Is it going to be, I think it was talked about, we anticipate for the next 12 months or 9 months. Has there been discussion of the timeline of how long it's going to take for us to get back to qualified?
So good question. That was a discussion we were having the other day. It really will depend on two things: on the level of reductions the district is able to follow through, how we close the year, and the state's budget. Again, we have an opportunity with the state's budget and their proposed one-time funding, if that comes to fruition, to plug a hole and to start to build financial resiliency. To be very careful not to spend one-time money on ongoing expenditures, and to use those one-time monies to strengthen the district's fiscal resiliency. And so very much dependent on the state's budget. If that budget is not as forthcoming with the dollars, it will make it more difficult for us. If it is more forthcoming, we have a pathway, but the ongoing expenditure reductions must go through, because without that, we're not going to be in a good territory.
Okay, thank you. Is it fair to say that that's actually one of the mistakes that we did in the past, which was to hang on to the one-time funding, for example, from COVID? Where some programs or positions were elevated from one-time funding and then paid through the general fund. I mean, that's like the 101 book finance that we normally get as trustees when we go through Masters of Governance that we're not supposed to do. But isn't it fair to say that that's one of the fundamental errors that we as a district did?
I would agree that yes, in some instances we had positions that became ongoing that were originally developed through the process, and we had other positions that we closed, but we were overextended in multiple areas and utilizing one-time dollars to be able to close that gap, and that was not a sustainable model.
Yeah, let me just say it. Adding positions that are ongoing, a one-time money, is a lesson learned. And one of the challenges is going to be, as we're principled in fiscal stewardship, is that, again, it looks like we are going to get a significant amount of funding from the state that's one time. So we have to be cognizant of lessons learned.
I mean, I just want to be, I didn't want to mince words. I would go beyond that, Maurice. It was also significant salary increases were also balanced on the back of one-time dollars. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Trustee Brown.
So I'm going to add to that discussion just that bear in mind that some of the decisions made at the time were based on the fact that, yes, positions were added, one-time dollars were spent, one-time dollars went away, and that there was a prevailing belief that the need didn't go away. And so a choice based on the financials at the time was to fund those on an ongoing basis. So I think, as it was stated, is a little too black and white. It's a choice that that was made based on the belief and the community's belief that the need didn't go away, right? I mean, that's still the ongoing discussion as we're prioritizing the cuts. as it relates to some of the supports that we have. So just needed to state that. I do have a question though. What triggers a second level intervention versus a first level intervention? And presumably we've only had a first level intervention at this point, but a second level intervention would be triggered if, as an example, we indicated a labor agreement that we as a board, or the county believed that we as a board and a district couldn't afford. That would trigger a second level intervention, presumably. Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. Back to you.
I'm just going to expand on that real quick. I know in other states, has there ever been a situation where the state or like the county comes in to actually help manage, like support that position for fiscal services? It's just a clarifying question because I know other states sometimes address it that way. So is that, I know it says a fiscal advisor. So how would that work?
So again, the levels can change, right? Right now we have a fiscal advisor that is supporting us in a proactive way in terms of looking at the financials, helping, making sure everything is accounted for. But again, if the district is unable to make the reductions, is unable to meet its financial obligations, and needs to take out a state loan, then that will trigger further intervention from the state. And again, we'll all be sitting, but we may have a state person right next to us, right? That is where we don't want to go. That's where other school districts in the county have gone, but we don't want to go there.
Yeah, the reason why I asked that was because I have seen that in other states where state personnel come in and help manage. So, okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'm going to open it to public comment. And also for those sitting in the audience, if you want to come speak on this item, you can come up and fill out a comment card. Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll close public comment. We're going to wrap up with any other concluding comments. And Trustee Jones, I see your hand up.
So I do want to point out that unfortunately we are not alone. We were the first to really realize how bad this situation was, but Oakland is $100 million that they're having to figure out right now. Sacramento Unified is $100 million. And then even locally, like, we caught this earlier than the others, which is good. It's horrible that it's happening, but it's good that we caught it early, because now we have our neighbor Livermore is cutting $16 million that they're having to deal with, and they're trying to do it in a month, which is difficult. We have Dublin that's having to cut somewhere between 7 to 11 million. Hayward across the hill is going to have to cut around 11 million. So all of us, unfortunately, are in this same exact situation. Slightly different reasons, but we are where we are. And so I've taught in districts that have been qualified. I've taught in districts that have been negative. One of the nice things that comes out of a situation like this, though, is that you are getting services that you would normally have to pay for otherwise to help you out of this situation, especially financial ones. It also creates policies and procedures that become permanent, which we've also brought up some of those, so that we don't see these problems again, which is now where the other districts are starting to end up. The other piece that we need to recognize too is that it's not a county takeover. That is not where we're at. We are still in control and we can still resolve these things. But this is also the chance of where we as a district get to redefine our values and our priorities. What are the programs that we're trying to protect? What are the programs that maybe are not consistently working for what we need? And so this is a chance for the district to really start redefining its values and where we want to move for the future.
Yes, thank you, Trustee Jones. Other comments? Yes, Trustee Brown.
I'll just make a comment on the backside of Trustee Jones, which was, you mentioned Oakland being $100 million. Their revenue per student is almost double ours, right? And so I mean, looking at the chart, it's about 29 compared to our 16.6. So just put things in perspective.
Thank you. I think that I just wanted to thank the board and the staff and Dr. Geisels and the team for having this type of conversation. That is one thing to kind of echo my fellow trustees, that our district is not in the best situation right now, but we're way better off than some of our other districts in terms of how we've been working together to be really thoughtful about processes and procedures and how to go through this. We have met countless times through special board meetings and last year to go through this process, not like Livermore with trying to do a precarious process in a month. And I appreciate you stating that, Trustee Jones, because this really is a time for our district to move forward. But I do think it's time that we need to do the reflection of the mistakes and how to strategically plan long-term, because some of the ripple effects of what happened 10, 15 years ago is just caught up in terms of how we're having to pay for it now. For example, in some of the facilities that were neglected in 08 and 09, when the last fiscal challenge that this district faced significantly. So with that said, I think we're ready for the next item, unless do you have a comment, Dr. Geisel, sorry?
No, I appreciate the comments from trustees. Thank you very much. So the next section, Ahmad, is budget management actions and reduction efforts, 10 minutes. And no, you don't get to bank the minutes saved from the last presentation. So take it away, 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. Hopefully I can cover it in less time. So the district has been making significant improvements in our budget monitoring and controls. A lot of things that Maurice was talking towards in terms of reviewing the budgets on a regular, we actually watch it on a weekly basis, and we're talking to the different departments on where they are and really highlighting that. I think we have significantly improved our practices and are trying to make sure that they're sustainable in reviewing purchases and contracts. We had established regular meetings, but we're really focusing on the budget and weekly and monthly cash flow analysis, and working with both the county and our fiscal advisors and others has really trying to hone in on those best practices. We've strengthened our position controls, working closely with HR, reviewing positions, reviewing open positions with the teams to ensure which ones are really needed and which ones can be closed. So that's an ongoing effort that has really, I think, improved our systems and improved our reporting. We have more work to do, and we look forward to FICMAT reports to see what other areas we can improve. In just small discussions, they will also share some of their best practices as we're talking with professionals in the industry and say, hey, this school district really has a good system in this. And they will share it, and then we can then model that.
Yeah, excuse me, Ahmad, another example, just in the conversation, and they brought this up, this is just an example. So when we look at the fiscal health report, again, it's opportunity. They mentioned they randomly pretty much mentioned the idea of having a tool that assesses grants. And because grants should fall in line with the focus of our work and not just, spray and pray that we're going to get money and we're all over the map. And one of the unintended consequences of going for a grant is not only being out of our foci, it's also the indirect cost that we can't charge and the amount of monitoring and managing that grant that we don't have the capacity to do, nor it could, again, be in the lens of our goals and objectives. So, we were all ears to that, and they can provide us with best practices and tools, like Ahmad was saying. That's just another example.
The next slide here, again, this is work we've done to date. I mean, the good thing is The district has the experience, because we're in that situation of declining enrollment, declining revenues, that we have been working on those adjustments for several years. And without those, we would even be in a more dire situation. So the district has made significant reductions both in staffing and aligning our staffing to enrollment the last 2 years, and that has helped us to be in a better position. The district has also increased its local revenues, and we talked about early and expanded learning, the Kids Club program, and opportunities there. The district does bring revenues from its property lease, and we're looking at how we can increase those from other areas. The district has also brought in new grants, and interestingly, grants also have requirements and have overhead and have a lot of responsibility. So I think being more thoughtful as we seek those grants are essential. And then we also have been improving, our expenditures, really making sure that what we spend on are for essential items and trying to freeze the non-essential expenditures. This next chart, you've seen it, is from the first interim report, and this is basically the allocation of the $11.16 million of reductions. Some of them are in the unrestricted, some of them are in the restricted area, and you can see that, again, the majority of them are in salaries and benefits. We have made reductions in books and supplies, and are about 85 to 90% of our expenditures are in people, and so that is where our reductions are currently concentrated. And it's kind of, you can see some of those dollars coming back because they are one time in 27, 28. Again, so that's a quick snapshot of the efforts around budget monitoring and reduction planning.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No.
Yeah.
Let's just jump the gun.
Questions? Don't jump all at once.
So just for public clarity, as far as the reductions go, we are not changing class size because that is part of the contract, correct?
Trustee Jones, are you speaking of class size staffing ratios?
Yeah.
Or class size maximums?
Yeah, like 34, 24.
The class size maximums, yeah, that's in the contract. And so are the staffing ratios. Those would need to be negotiated. You have a
Okay,
question?
cool. I just wanted to make sure on that one. So we're not looking at the cap size part at all. That wasn't on the list of reductions, the caps.
Correct, that's correct.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, so the district will continue to meet the state's class size for TK of 20 to 2 adults, and the district will continue to meet the K3 of 24 to 1. Those were not part of any of the reduction planning work. And I believe our 4 or 5 classes is at 31, yes.
And then our overall, in general, though, our class averages are below the class caps on average, right?
That's correct. Our though we staff below the class size maximums, that's where we begin. The data shows that the very few of our classes are at the maximum, and fewer still are over. We're well below.
All right, thank you.
Other questions?
Mine are more comments. I'm going to hold.
Okay. So I will ask Trustee Carrion to give her questions when we come back to comments. I'm going to open this for open comment, for public comment. If there's anyone in the audience. Okay, then I will close it and I'll go back to you, Trustee Brown, for comments.
So I hate using the term, for the benefit of the public, should they be listening, I went back to our our special board meeting that we held on November 20th, which was the end of the budget discussions. And so just wanted to state categorically that based on the cuts that are programmed and are not negotiable on the management side, management between 2023 to 2024 to 2025, 2026, management salaries has gone down 18.7%. Over that same time period, certificated with the proposed reductions, and when I say salaries, what I mean by that is the total cost for salaries, not including statutory or benefit costs, would be minus 2%. So we keep getting comments regarding the district office and so on. So I just wanted to state that categorically that the salary, the total amount we're paying in salaries for management has gone down 18% over a 3-year period. The other comment I wanted to make was just about the sensitivity of our ADA forecasting. Because if you look at our negative amount, like the 2.5 million that we're negative, that's 150 students, right? And so I know we do our best, we plan conservatively, we adjust, et cetera, but I just want to point out that when we are flying close to the 3% reserves and we're trying to solve for 2.5 million in the red, that is our sensitivity, is about 150 students, right? So as we get into planning reductions as a board, we do need to always be very conservative on our ADA when we're sizing, because otherwise what happens is if we get into the next school year and then we find that we have 150 less students than we expected or forecasted, we're back in the same boat, right? So I'm just saying that's the level of sensitivity that we have, and that's based on 16.6K per student, right? That is the 2.5 million. So just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you for that additional analysis. Can I get a spreadsheet on that too? No. In all fairness, I appreciate the clarification because it puts a number of really drilling it down to see how we can understand how impactful our enrollment and how the fact that every time we lose a student, it is impacting the education for all of our students. Yes, Trustee Jones?
I just think it's also, we want to, we as a board and we as a staff want to be open and transparent with the district and the people in it, that, we're hoping that bargaining goes well, but depending on how it goes, we could very well be back having to look at the list that we preserve, those column 3s in February, potentially, depending on how that goes. So hopefully it goes well, but just be prepared for if there are things on that list that you are very passionate about to come out and speak your piece on that so that we know.
So yes, thank you, Trustee Jones. I'm going to pass it back to Trustee Carrion for any questions or comments. Okay. All right, so I think my fellow trustees have summarized quite well on this item. So we're going to go to the next one, which is revenue outlook and options. And I see it's slated for 10 minutes. So any speakers that are on this item? It's your show.
Okay, great. So we're going to begin with our current enrollment efforts, and then we'll go into some other areas. So we got a little bit of diversity in terms of speakers on this one. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Dialazzo.
Thank you, Mr. Shiko Islami. So we've already touched on several of these bullet points, so I'll just highlight this slide. As we know, we've been declining enrollment for several years, and so we put some things into action many years ago, and we just wanted to highlight some of those actions here on this particular slide. We don't just rely on one data point. We don't rely on legislation to save our enrollment. So we really take the Band-Aid off and dive right into try to improve our our capture rates and our enrollment. So the biggest one is probably the first bullet there about Kids Club, and just looking at our efforts to break down some of those things to help resolve the Kids Club waiting list and so forth, which was really huge for many years. So we are working on that. The other one is the outreach and information sessions, and this is really that education piece that I talked about earlier. What do parents know? What do parents expect from us in terms of what can we provide for their 4-year-olds now and their 5-year-olds? Inter-district transfers was a big push for us. You can see we went over the data. We're over 560 transfer students, which is a really good number. I would attribute that to one of the biggest things with the Pleasanton Virtual Academy, but also knowing that students want to come to Pleasanton. And so we've allowed more students or accepted more students through the IDT process in the recent years. And then, of course, we have academic programs that are very attractive, I feel, to our neighboring districts. The IDTs are, I was correct earlier, the majority of them are coming from neighboring districts, but we get some from not neighboring districts. So we have DLI, CTE programs, music band, middle college, etc. And then the outreach for sure is something that we're doing. I mean, just last year alone, we did the drop off your child at school campaign. You know, that was a nice thing to kind of just get out to the businesses in the city, because IDTs actually will be approved, a more probability of being approved if a person works in the city. So if they work in the city of Pleasanton, we look at those IDTs, and that's one of the factors that we highly consider for enrolling that student. And then the last one, you know, realtors. I myself went to the, what do they call, Tri-Valley Real Estate Network, and I presented to a bunch of realtors throughout the Tri-Valley to brag about PUSD. That was not only fun, they asked some really good questions, and it's those same questions that you guys are asking, you know, in terms of, well, how many kids are in this school? What's the ratio of the class size? Really good questions from our partner realtors. Okay, on this slide, some opportunities for us that we want to make sure we pursue. The biggest target, like we said earlier when we did the analysis of the demographers report, was that capture rate. So we analyzed that, and then we want to hyper-focus on our strategies to capture more kids, obviously in the TK and K. Trustee Brown earlier said that 47% could be attributed to just more kids now are eligible to be TK. One thing that is a good data point is that our K capture rate is 77%, which is pretty good. It's actually getting up there closer to the grade 1 to 5 capture rate, which are in the 80s. So any percentage is a good percentage to increase. And Trustee Carry-On, you mentioned about our TK extension, so extending the day, and then our kindergarten expansion. So those are strategies that we are in talks and really trying to be strategic in how we can lengthen the day for our students, our youngest students, to stay in Pleasanton. And I already mentioned the whole thing about outreach and marketing and promoting and so forth. And you know, one of the biggest ones, I said it earlier, about the contiguous counties in the Bay Area, and really reaching out to those counties to see if we can improve our IDTs, you know, something we did even 2 years ago. And I think that brought in some kids into our PVA program, our Virtual Academy program. So those are some ideas for the board to know about. And if there's anything that we can think about as a group, Dr. Geisel's talked about us meeting, just really diving in head first and working anything that we can to improve this enrollment.
Mr. D'Alonzo, just for the viewing audience and people here, ITDs are inter-district transfers, and what that means is we're trying to get as many students as possible enrolled outside of our PUSD boundaries.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so The district has other efforts, and we want to talk about leveraging our property assets to ongoing revenue sources. And then Dr. Geisels will talk a little bit about our partial tax options and opportunities, and we'll discuss increasing community givings and donations and our grant efforts. So in terms of property asset, the district has been working on a multi-year plan, and that started with the purchase of the current property that we're on, which generates over $1 million in revenue, and about $750,000 of those comes into the general fund. The other portion is paid for the remaining COP that we have and maintaining the facility. Additionally, the district is and has on the market additional rental space on this facility, and we've had multiple showings, and we'll continue those opportunities, hopefully to extend our revenues from this property. The district is actively working to vacate First and Bernal property and to place that property for development. And those activities include rebuilding the new school on a portion of the property, relocating adult education, relocating pretty much all the programs in there to other locations, including STEAM moving to over at Harvest Park where iPals is. And so the idea with that is to be able to then take the value of that property and invest it in a revenue generating property that could potentially bring the district anywhere from $2 to $3 million of ongoing annual revenue. This, however, is going to take years to develop because of all of the pieces and the puzzles that we're working on. And the most significant one of that is finding an option for the relocation of the maintenance, operation, and transportation facility. So we have looked at multiple properties in the city, some with some kind of facilities on it, and others that have been, bare land. And so there is significant challenges with that. We haven't found the perfect property, and so we've kind of focused our efforts now recently to using existing property and facilities in order to expedite that process and to kind of utilize it and again, reduce costs because we don't have to buy a property and see how that can support it. And so one of the properties, and specifically that the district is looking at, is between Pleasanton Middle School and Hearst Elementary School, is significant amount of property. Again, Hearst sits on about 10 acres. I don't remember exactly what PMS is. It might be closer to 25 acres, but there are pockets of opportunity in that area that can accommodate it. Some of it we'd have to probably build some new facilities. But that's an area that we are looking at, and at a future date we'll bring some report and analysis to the board for consideration. The district is also, staff has bringing a 7-Eleven committee together to look at the empty field at Donlin and as a surplus property, again, to monetize that and to use that in the mix of work that we need to do between the MOT and then also vacating the First and Bernal property. Okay, so I know you probably have a lot of questions on that. A few more slides and you get to ask your questions. The next one, Maurice, is the parcel tax considerations.
Yes, I do want to add some additional context. Thank you, Ahmad and Ed. It's a great presentation. I do want to add some additional thoughts about Hearst. Looking at how much land there is out there, and time is of the essence. We've looked at several properties in the range from about $4 to $6 million, Ahmad. We've went out and looked at several, and the idea came to us of, in the short run and even in the intermediate, especially when we look at enrollment projections declining for quite a while, instead of spending upwards to $6-7 million, just really starting examining the property that we already have and moving it there. We really are cognizant of being too short-sighted, but we don't think we are, because we think the trend is going to last for a while. And what that does is it gives us a faster runway to move the MOT so we can position the Bernal property for making money to buy another property to lease and add to the general fund. Now, these things don't take, they don't happen overnight, but part of it is, to speed up the process of getting revenue faster. One other thing I wanted to mention too is we've been working and contacting local hospitals and medical and looking for resources there. There's some things that are going on in their own budgets and the like, but we will continue to work those relationships also. As far as parcel tax considerations, I have met with President McCaughey and Trustee Brown. We've met with Evan Branning and some community members and started to take a look at it. I don't have an agenda here or anything in terms of next steps. Just wanted to give an update, and please, by all means, jump in, Trustee Brown and President McCaughey. Again, we've said this before, there are 61 local Bay Area districts in surrounding counties with parcel tax. And just to give an order of magnitude of what kind of revenue it would raise, we're looking at, for every $50 is about $1 million in revenue. And if we went out for example, a $200 parcel tax, that would be $400, which would be about roughly 2% of our general budget, just to get perspective there.
4 million, Maurice, 4 million.
4 million, thank you. Or 2% of our total budget. The thing is, there's two paths to go. One is the traditional path, which is 2/3 approval. We went out in June 2009, 62.7%. We went out in May 2011 and got very close with 65.16 approval. And this is a bill that, or a measure that can go on exclusively by the district itself. It's very expensive in terms of looking at consultants, and moreover, once the board potentially passes a parcel tax measure, we have to hand it off privately. We can't be involved with any time or material. And you can see there it can vary from $250,000 to $1 million. And that's a lot of money to raise, as well as timing considerations and the like. The other one is the community-led initiative, which is 50% plus one. This would require a citizen group to gather signatures. I believe it's 10%. And also it would have to be through the city, and they would have to consider the risk of litigation, which, in their mind, there's a lot to interpret in this, and it's complex. In their mind, there's a lot of risk associated with it, and there hasn't been a lot of test case in terms of it being legally defensible. So that's where we're at. I just wanted to put it on the radar. Don't have any steps planned, don't have recommendations, but obviously it's one of those revenue streams that the board could consider to lead. Any comments on that, Justin or Kelly? Okay. And then the next one is, I'll speed it up here, but I don't want to speed it up for the Pleasanton Partnership and Education Foundation, PPIE. We have the executive director, Andrea Wilson, who's going to speak to some points about the foundation, which raises $770,000 a year.
So, thank you all for having me. I will keep it quick. I know it's very late, but I think during this whole process, we kept hearing from the community, how can we help? How can we help? So I wanted to make sure that people understand that we're here and we exist. We're not making up a huge part of the budget right now, but we do between $700,000 and $800,000 that we donate every year. And, foundations like ours exist throughout the entire Bay Area. Some of them do a tenth of what we do, and some of them do 3 times what we do. So the ability to do more is there, and I really hope that our community would get behind us. We do fundraise a year ahead of time. So everything we do right now, we're fundraising for 26, 27, and then our board of directors will decide where that money goes. We've committed to holding steady with the areas that we're holding now, but if we can do more, we would hope to be able to do that. We are on track to have a good year, but not quite ready to announce any of that. But I did want people to understand sort of where all that money that we fundraise comes from. 65% of our funding is annual giving, which is during registration period. When our families come back to school, they register, they go through Future Fund, and that also includes corporate matching. Currently, only 18% of our families give to PPIE, and that is down from our peak of 22% in 2019, right before COVID. Of the people, when they're going through registration, only 83% of our families are actually doing the step where they go through Future Fund as well. So we are losing that little bit there. Our community events make up about 25% of what we do. That includes the Run for Education and the Gala, basically. And that includes a lot of event sponsorships as a piece of that. And that doesn't really capture, people that choose to do the run or do the gala that don't give. So we don't have that exact percentage, because there are probably people that are doing more, but we're not capturing that as a percentage of our annual giving. And then we get corporate grants, just direct. I apply for a lot of grants every year, so I get money from that, and then just direct donations. So one of the things I heard also during your public meetings was, well, there's all these companies out there who's supporting us. Well, I did want people to know Workday is a huge supporter of our schools. The Safeway Foundation, Lucky Save Mart, their foundation, the Clorox Foundation, Stanford Healthcare Tri-Valley, Robert Half and Fremont Bank. All of those are local Tri-Valley businesses that are giving right back here. But that sort of like you guys are seeing where cuts are happening all over the place, right? Like these corporate companies are facing a lot of challenges, and that is the area where I have seen the most significant decline is in grants to our foundation over the past, I'd say, 3 years. But on the flip side of that, a lot of companies are using their money for matching gifts now. Instead of going and saying, the companies are getting very niche in what they want to support. They want to support very little things that, this is not what we do, but companies are also saying to their employees, you get to choose what you do with the money that we're giving to whatever nonprofit, and you get to choose. So we have seen a 50% growth in corporate giving over the past 3 years, which is huge. So I did just wanted to say all that, and just say that we continue to want to be a partner with our community, with our stakeholders, with our site leaders, with our parents, and how we can best support PUSD, because we love our schools. Thank you.
So stay there for a second, just in case. I'm gonna, while you're standing there, I'm just gonna pass it to my fellow trustees while she's up, if you have specific questions, and wanted to thank you in advance for having to wait. If I'd known the timing, I probably would have asked to have you present sooner, so thank you for being so patient.
Of course.
And it was important enough that we wanted to incorporate you into the presentation. So I'm gonna pass it to my fellow trustees for questions or comments.
I just have a comment. I mean, I've had the pleasure of serving on the PPIU board as a consulting member, and really appreciate all the work and effort that goes into this stuff. The comment, I love the fact that you're stating the facts as they are. I also like the fact that you're emphasizing the corporate matching. I think that's a huge and potentially untapped further potential, because like you said, people, maybe only 18% are donating, but if even a large percentage of that 18% can leverage corporate matching, then that's extra. In some cases, 1x, 2x in the fund. So thank you.
Other trustees? Yes, Trustee Jones.
Y'all are the first and only fun run I have ever done. I'm a power walker, but you were the only one that I've done.
Great.
I wanted to ask, when it comes to PPIE, what do you need from us, or what can we do to better support you as a district and just in general?
I think helping our audience understand that we're here and that we exist, and that everything we do is fundraising for the school district. Our money is not going anywhere else. It is all going back to the schools. So I think we need voices and the advocates out in the community talking about us and helping spread the word. We are trying to do it. It is just me. We have a board of directors, and then I just have a tiny little part-time 2 people in the office. So help with that. What we do have like an ambassador program too. So every school site is represented by what we call a PPIE ambassador, and they're also really great about helping to spread the word. But you can always continue to talk about us and encourage people to take part, especially in the run. They don't have to run; they can power walk.
Yes, Trustee Karen.
Yes, so if we have to make some more cuts, have you already made your budget for next year, or would it be possible for?
We have not determined. We have determined that we won't go down on any level of what we've been supporting. We'll stay at that. Where we go up, those decisions haven't been made. They will be made within the next couple of months. Mm-hmm.
And I think my question, kind of echoing my fellow trustees, is in regards to what else do you feel could help with that fundraising element? So it sounds like, for example, the location or the timing for families making the donation to PPIE. I don't know. I'm just, based upon what you were saying, it's like 3 layers down, and it sounds like those donations have gone down, but like what else in terms of timing for the donations, or particular, you gave us a lot of data in terms of what seems to be the best hook for families to provide support for PPIE?
I think that the biggest thing, and this is partially on us as well, is like making sure families understand the impact of what we're fundraising for. So how important music education is, how important, all the, librarian support, which I think they do, but then taking that next step and tying that we are giving that support. So again, I think it comes back to making sure we are meeting our audience where they are and educating them.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Trustee Brown.
Is there anything else that we could, like, as a district, we have access to digital signboards outside all the schools and the eConnect and so on? Is there more we could be doing there?
We are, we have a wonderful communications team that we, already partner with, working and putting stuff in eConnect all the time. We work with the school sites to put stuff on the marquees. Like, we're working in that direction to do a lot more of that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Your
everyone.
gift. Thank you so much, Andrea. And then our last slide, I'm going to ask Suzanne Frey to come up in case there's questions. I'm not going to read off this slide. I'm sending you.
Maurice, before you go to the last slide, there's 2 more bullets I need to cover on this slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes. So in addition to the foundation, a lot of the local donations are going directly to sites and programs. And so that $4.14 million is a significant amount of dollar that flows. It could be outdoor education. It could be classroom supplies that parents donate to, or a program to beautify the campus or get a new marquee. And so those are significant dollars that do flow in through, and they are restricted. That's an important way the community gives. And then the district also manages, talking about grants, we manage about $8.7 million of grants. Some of them are one-time, some of them are continuing. And they carry significant type of oversight and reporting requirements. So those are all ways the district is able to, go further with the funds that we have. So with that, now I can go to the next slide. And Suzanne, I think you're going to cover.
All right. But
that's a whole new section. Do we want to do these 2 and then?
It's,
deal?
yeah,
Let's get
and
it
I'm
done?
being,
Okay.
being very cognizant of time, so like I was saying, sending you substantive updates on where we're at with this, and I'm not going to just talk to the bullets, I'll just hit the highlights, and that is we're outreaching to legislators. We are working with a movement that's growing. It started with Fremont, and now it's up to probably 10 superintendents led by the Buckeye School District. Suzanne, I really want to thank you for doing the work and connecting people. The thing is, we have to move quickly. It's about getting the attention of our legislators about this issue of us having a low unduplicated count of students and really trying to increase the LCFF base grant while, of course, supporting and maintaining an equity-based support funding model. And so it's about AB 1204 right now, and it's really the PTA's working with us, and the superintendents are working together to try to get the attention of legislators. We're a little worried that we're going to fall on deaf ears, even though we're on the bottom decile of funding, and our expenditures are again on the top decile. It's just getting people aware that this, you know, it's too far out of whack, that we need more base funding. So I just wanted to hit those high notes here. It's late, and I'd like to just conclude all of that at this point, and Suzanne's here to take questions on the advocacy, and thank you, well, she's gone, for Andrea for staying, and President McCaughey.
Okay, so any other questions or comments on these items? Yes.
Just two quick questions. And you can answer these in the communique, but I really feel like we need to do an outreach for TK and K. And I know, like last year, we went to farmers market, and there was a lot of parents who had no idea about 4th or 5th grade. So I want to know what kind of advocacy we're going to be doing. If you could just maybe update us. And then my other question is a wait list for Kids Club. I know you've been working really hard to get it down. I'm wondering what the numbers are now and what we can do to get that to 0, especially in TK and K. So that would be great. Thank you. You don't have to answer it now.
Trustee Brown, I saw you hitting.
Yeah, it was just a question. So we have eConnect, and we need to, have we thought about asking our parents to email the legislature?
Do you want to take the mic, please, Suzanne?
Good evening, trustees. Good evening, cabinet. Thank you, Trustee Brown. Yes, we have, but I don't think we're quite ready. We're waiting for the collaborative that Dr. Geisels mentioned to just finalize the ask that we want to come forward as a group of districts. It will likely be a message like raise the base, but the superintendent of the Buckeye School District is working on a website that we want to have available with information that we can then point our parents to. So we're, I'm being told it's another week or so out when that is ready, and then yes, through eConnect, we'd like to do an outreach to our community to help support the advocacy efforts. And also, as Dr. Geisels mentioned, our PTAs have a legislative conference coming up in Sacramento early next month, and we'd also like to arm them with that advocacy language that they can go then meet with the legislators and lawmakers and pass that message along. So we're not quite there. We'd like to have those materials available for the community.
Okay, one follow-up question. Have we considered an online e-petition that we could direct parents to across all of these districts that are connecting as a way of creating a sense of the magnitude of the ask without necessarily asking them to write individual letters to legislatures?
It's a very good suggestion. Thank you, Trustee Brown.
Yes.
And
Can I follow that up for you really quick?
absolutely.
So a lot of these legislative offices, because I know some of the people that work in them, they tally the number of emails they get on a topic, but you'll want to change the subject header on the emails or else they'll just mark and ignore. So you'll want to make sure that kind of shifts a little bit. But the other thing is they really pay attention to phone calls as well. So if you have parents that feel comfortable or brave enough to do phone calls, they will record and put more pressure on those too. So having both of those is a good option. Besides Ortega, RBK, and Jerry McNerney, the last one you might want to reach out to is State Senator Aisha Wahab, because she's running for Congress of this area. And if I remember correctly, she's on the Finance Committee for budget. So this is one of those ways where she can show out support of some sort and has a vested interest in this area. And she also oversees Fremont.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, any other comments or questions from fellow trustees? One more?
I have a couple actually for revenue gain. Just on this topic, have we considered using funds either, because we can't use the funds from the bond to build bleachers at the middle school, but would it be possible to use Prop 2 funds to build bleachers at our middle schools for the tracks so that we can host events and get money off of those events?
We are looking, I know that, in talking to the parents, they've asked for bleachers so that, both for comfort purposes and so on and so forth. So what our response to them was, we need to close out the project with DSA, because when you have bleachers and it's a DSA project, their requirements become significant, but you can, there are, kind of allowable bleachers that are, a certain height that we can then engage in once the project is complete. So we're looking into that.
Okay, so that might be a way for us to do revenue. My next one is, since we're looking at the MOT and putting it somewhere around PMS and Hearst, and we might be having to do construction and move things around, would it be possible to look into potentially turning Hearst and PMS into a K-8 school? Because we've had K-8s in the past before, and this might be a way of preventing anyone from losing their jobs, but also potentially saving money and working on our numbers for those sites.
That's something we can look at in this study in terms of consolidation and what that means in terms of long-term, medium-term, and both from an educational standpoint and also a facility standpoint.
All right. Would we be able to use Prop 2 funds for the MOT construction by any chance?
I don't believe that is that we qualify for any funding around that, but we can definitely look into it.
All right, and then for long-term, potentially expanding options for DLI at other sites for other links, like again, long-term, but you start planning sooner. But looking at what other languages at other sites to maybe draw more students into that, or get students from other districts to come for those languages. And then my last one is, have we decided when we're going to be sending out the survey around the parcel tax, because we allocated funding for that?
So I don't recall funding being allocated for, the last time we did a survey was 2 years ago, and that was within the community for a parcel tax, but I don't recall that as a direction. Yeah.
Sorry, I should say that into the microphone. Yeah, we haven't voted on that.
Okay,
We had the public discussion, but that is not an item that's being brought in front of the board yet.
Okay.
I could add, though, Evan Branning, the president of APT, and I are looking at consultants right now. Just looking at the market scan for potential consultants, but no plan in the work for surveys at this point.
All right, and then my last question is just, what were some of the ideas that you had for expanding TK for before and after school?
So extending TK, the concept being, how do we help parents? We know, anecdotally, I'll speak for myself, I know that's an ask. I would enroll my child in TK if I didn't have to pick them up at 12:30 and drive them somewhere. If I didn't have to have another company that is not affiliated with Pleasanton pick up my child to bring them to the after daycare program. So going to your point, one of the things that we are looking at is, number one, obviously, how can we expand Kids Club? And one of the barriers in the past has been facilities, but due to all the building of the new TK classrooms, like newer classrooms, is there a way to leverage those classrooms? And those are other discussions that I won't get into, but you're asking. That's one way. What's the staffing look like? It came up earlier regarding our recruitment efforts. How can we staff this program accordingly based on the licensing? If recruiting is a barrier due to licensing, do we have other options within our district of current staff, non-Kids Club staff, but current staff that may be able to stay, and we'd have to figure this out. This isn't, again, just, it's not baked. So we're trying to figure out, well, are there other options where we can utilize current staff who may be part-time staff who are already working with our TK students to possibly stay longer? These are some options, and I'm being very careful with my words because we have labor partners that we want to make sure they're on board with the conversation.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, I don't have any questions or comments, but I would like to open the floor for public comment on anything that has been presented since last time public comment was open. Okay, if not, I will close public comment and just state that as we wrap up tonight, that there is a process that we're working with Ms. Lanita to help record public comment that is highlighted and presented during our board regular meetings as well as the special board meeting. And as our fellow trustee Brown already stated, in general, we're not really privy to actually respond to public comment, but I wanted to just reiterate that every time any person comes up to speak, your points are well recognized, and we value your input and the comments from the public, because clearly as trustees, we're serving you as the public, and that's, you are the voters who voted us in. So every single time you come and sit and then come up to the podium, your comments and opinions matter, and we take every single public comment very, very seriously. And so that stated, our staff will be following up in many different formats, whether it's an ask or additional clarifying information. We're actually putting together a tally spreadsheet and everything so that as fellow trustees, we'll also have a way to get follow-up information as well. So I just wanted to highlight that and give that clarification. And I will probably highlight that in many of the upcoming meetings, because it's a challenge sometimes, because we have these meetings that are in public, we are operating in public, but sometimes because of the Brown Act, we're not able to respond to all of the comments or concerns brought by people who come speak. So with that said, I'm going to conclude this meeting and thank staff, fellow trustees for the conversation and dialogue. Our next regular board meeting is next Thursday, January 29th, 2029. Did I have that date right? Do I have the date right? 26. Sorry, it's late, 26th. I don't have it right in front of me. And then, as already noted by one of my fellow trustees, there may be some special board meetings slated in February related to potential conversations by the board for potential reductions. Thank you, everyone who came out tonight and hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. Have a good night. This meeting is officially adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees.